And we are live. Welcome to the NBA Deeper Dive. It is Wednesday, January 29th. I am Josh Engleman. I'm joined by Chris Spags. We're brought to you by the Portfolio EV trial. Get it for a week for free if you've never used it before. And trust me, you should use it right now, especially when it costs you $0. 9-game slate ahead of us today. It was light work yesterday with only 4 games. There's 2 later games, but FanDuel and DraftKings dropped them both, which is always nice and incredibly helpful because then we don't have to talk about 2 separate things. So hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live, and follow us both on Twitter. What's going on, Spags?
Excited to be here. Since the last time we did a stream, I got a brand new microphone. I now have to have a little headphone in my ear so I can hear Josh whispering to me throughout it because I don't want to pick up the audio. So playback people are going to be stoked. No more echo, hopefully, on Josh when we're doing streams together. But yeah, it's good. It's a chaotic NBA slate, like so many Q tags, so many things move around. Updating projections and minutes is like a nightmare. So the good news is like the value on the slate, I think, is the best value we've had in the slate in terms of I find it hard to believe a few of them could fail. But of course, they'll find a way to fail because that's the joy we have in DFS every day.
Yes, it is. We always get the failures. And today, man, we are ripe to get a couple more because there are some disgusting plays on today's slate. Potentially more to come. We've got a lot of injury news, a lot of guys that are just already out. So some of these hypothetical awful plays are not even hypothetical. They're just awful, but we got to use them anyway. You ready to talk about some of those awful potential plays?
I can't wait. Dying for it.
Oh, God. All righty. Well, here we go. The Brooklyn Nets, the worst team on the slate. Just for the record, they are not the lowest owned team any longer. That belongs to the Chicago Bulls, but this is pretty close. 6% in the aggregate. They are 2.5-point underdogs in Charlotte. There's a 205 total in this one. And the big piece of news that we have to talk about here is the 205 total is 20 points lower. Sorry, 15 points lower than any other game on the slate. This is the slowest pace by at least 2 possessions, 92.3. And as I mentioned, there's no ownership here for Brooklyn. 4% coming into D'Angelo Russell. Everybody else is at 1 or 0. That's the same story on DraftKings and FanDuel. No Boyan, no Noah Clowney, no Cam Johnson, no Max Lewis Melton, Cam Thomas, or Dariq Whitehead. Welcome back, Trendon Watford. But do you even want to talk about Brooklyn? Because as I look at them right now, they are essentially unplayable.
Yeah, I'm with you. I kind of made the case for D'Angelo Russell the other day, and I really had a disappointing experience with D'Angelo Russell the other day because they pulled him in the 4th quarter of a game that was a single-digit game. They are actively tanking in January would be my guess, which kind of thought anyway based on the rotations and how they've gone. And Russell's been hurt, so like I get why maybe it's been a little bit weird. But like legit, like it was the 4th quarter. He never came back out. They were within 10. They pulled him when they were with 10. So I don't think you play Nets at this point unless it's like the young guys, unless you have a lot of guys out of the rotation. But especially with Simmons in, like I got 4% Russell. I love Russell, and now he's played for the Nets, as we talked about last time, but I don't trust anything here. The guys being all projected for under 30 minutes, like there isn't really a way to see them getting to that high 30s you want to see for the true upside. So even with Clowney out, yeah, I don't think there's anybody that really looks worth it from the Nets other than maybe taking a shot on Russell in the hope that they realize we shouldn't pull our star player in the 4th quarter of a close game for the optics.
Ooh. Are we really gonna call him? I mean, I guess he is technically the Nets star player. We are being very loose with the team star, but if someone has to be a star, I guess it is D'Angelo Russell. You know who it's not? Tosan Awoman.
He projects as like a 5x value today. He's got that going for him, but he could be he thinks he's a star. He shoots a lot like he's a star.
He does. He does indeed think he's a star. So does Cam Thomas, unfortunately not here today. So Brooklyn obviously looks like they suck. They're not getting any ownership. They're my least optimal team, my lowest boom team. Charlotte is slightly different, and that is because they've got a couple guys out today. No LaMelo Ball, no Josh Green, no Cody Martin, no Brandon Miller, no Mark Williams, and Salon is with the G League team. So they only have 10 active bodies, and that is resulting in 4 guys getting heavy ownership, or at least some ownership, and then scattered to a couple other dudes. Let's start with the guys that are getting the ownership. 45% currently to a $3,700 center, Moussa Diabate. I'm having a hard time wanting to avoid this, although that ownership does feel a tad high.
Yeah, Diabate, I was lower on before when rerunning the sim right before the show. I guess right as we were starting the show, I have Diabate projected about 4 points lower than Stokastic. I still got him in 55% of my lineups now, so I think the value is a little bit hard to pass up. 3,700, he is a starter. The one thing I would say for Diabate, and again, I'm not impressed with him overall with how he's played on the year, averaging 0.8 fantasy points per minute. When you are a big man with some length who sometimes gets blocks, like it's just not a good run out for him. But like the centers have played well for Charlotte this entire year, whether it was Mark Williams, whether it was Nick Richards. Those guys are, I think, different talents than Diabate, but it's possible he rebounds more, does a little bit more than he's done normally. So I'll be okay with being on the chalk here. It's just that's a lot of ownership for Diabate, and I think J-Val's a much better play. I like the pay up centers, but if that's a value you have to take, and that's what I'm getting right now, I guess that's the value I'll take.
Yeah. I got him at 23 fantasy points in 27 minutes, 6.2x his salary. He at 3,700, I have the target score for him at 28 fantasy points. It's just a really cost-effective spot. And in a situation where they essentially have like 1.5 big men. Taj Gibson might start. They've given him nominal starts in these situations. He plays like 10 to 16 minutes. And then they kind of just need Diabate to play as much as he can. Otherwise, they're going to be going extra small with like Miles Bridges as the quote unquote five. So I think the minutes are safe. It's all about just not getting 6 fouls in 14 minutes or something for Diabate. Let's just, for a quick second, ask, do you think you'll get to Taj Gibson?
I got 0% in the semi ran here. I don't have him projected that well. I suppose if I were to give a boost, and frankly, my biggest DFS win was a couple of years ago, won 60K in a slate where Nerlens Noel was a chalk. It was a playoff slate. Noel was a chalk. I played Taj Gibson. It won me the money. So I have a soft spot for the idea of leverage Taj Gibson, but he's just not that dude anymore. So I think that for him, I don't think I want to go there conceptually, but he's 3K min and direct leverage on a 50% owned play. So like the DFS theory of it should make Taj Gibson somewhat appealing, but I don't think he is practically.
Next guy in ownership here for Charlotte actually came down a little bit, and I'm slightly surprised. $4,300, small forward, power forward eligible. He's 30% owned. Josh Okogie. Seems to me that he's just going to step into the Cody Martin, Josh Green minutes, play as many as he can. Not a bad per minute guy. I find him easier to get to than Diabate. I actually think Okogie is the best play for Charlotte today.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have 59% of Kogi. He's been great all year, averaging 0.97 fantasy points per minute. And it stood out to me too before when he was on Phoenix that there were a couple times where Durant would be out, and then all of a sudden it would look like a much better situation for Okogie with how he's played on the year. So for Okogie, yeah, I'm with you a good amount. I've got almost 2x the field on him. We played about 30%, it looks like. I've got him at 59. So I'm a fan of Okogie here. The issue is, like, I guess in the past, he's been sort of the Bridges backup. Obviously now you have Josh Green out. You have enough guys missing on the wing with Martin out as well. You kind of have to play him a good amount of minutes, it would seem. And he's been good, and he's one of the vets. And frankly, one of the issues with Miles Bridges is like he doesn't respect his teammates. He just takes every shot away from them when it's not the star guys out there. Guys respect Jo enough, I think, that he'll at least give him the ball a little. So not that Okogie can't get the ball himself too and do things with it. But I like Okogie. I think Okogie's a really strong play and one of the better values in the slate. And he's one of the big 3 values that I think, like, if I had to lock him in every lineup, I'd be okay doing it.
Agreed. How do you want to handle Miles Bridges here? 8,200 power forward only, and essentially the only real basketball player left for the Hornets. He's 23% owned, 52 on FanDuel because he's only 7,700 and has an MPE. Happy to get to him, but he's not grading out all that well for me. At 8,200, I have him needing 50 fantasy points, which is certainly on the table in a matchup against Brooklyn, but might be a little outside his depth.
Yeah, so I also have him at 50 fantasy points today, which means I'm getting him at 40x ownership or 40% ownership, about 2x the field. I think he's a good play. I think the main thing that stands out to me, and again, I like watching crappy basketball teams because I think there's an edge for TFS in doing that. Bridges just shoots. He just shoots when the guys are off and LaMelo's gone. Mark Williams not being there. He's just going to get his shots up no matter what. And granted, in some situations I'd worry about that because he's not the most talented at creating high value shots. He's playing Brooklyn. And I think that's the thing too that would stand out pretty meaningfully to me. So I have no issue going to Bridges. I frankly get more than 40 and not be mad at it. I do have him about 7 fantasy points higher than Stokastic does, where he's, about 43 and change. I've got him at 50 and change. But I think the rates back it out. He hasn't had a lot of time this year without Miller and without LaMelo and without Mark Williams out there. But in the time he has had, he's averaged 1.3 fantasy points per minute, 34% usage, 23% assist rate. It's a small sample size at about 325 possessions, but it's enough that I think lines up with how I view Miles Bridges, that whenever the guys are out, Miles Bridges just views it as Miles Bridges night. And I think he's going to view that here and not meet a lot of, resistance from the Nets side of things.
Is it Vasily Micic day today for you? 5,300 point guard only. We've ran into him a lot for value options when LaMelo ends up out. Price is already up though, 4% owned. I would argue that he might actually be underrepresented right now.
So Micic, the issue is that you have KJ Simpson able to go today. He's not in the G League. You have Isaiah Wong able to go. Whenever those guys are both available, Micic's minutes just get less secure in a way that I don't feel great about. The price tag being up for him as well. I got Micic in 3% of my lineups. I get the logic. I think the same thing we talked about with the Taj Gibson concept. It's like, yeah, if you get a lot of ownership going to Bridges, a lot of ownership going to Kogi, you take Nick Smith more, you take Micic more and hope that they fill that production up and the guys that don't get there, we're going to be much chalkier. Hard to do that for me with Micic just because the point guards and play there. And if ever there were a day to play Micic, it's when he's not super chalk and take the shot that he just gets more minutes. But with Simpson being in and Wong, I just don't love the shots there of him just getting minutes sucked away by those guys.
I think that's fair. It is a complicated backcourt today for Charlotte, whether it's Wong or Curry or Simpson. They got a lot of options. Do you want anything else from Charlotte?
No, I got 2%. Daquan Jeffries is getting more before, but I think the minutes moved around enough here for Jeffries that he's not a priority play. But I would say he's one of those guys that could pull a little bit from an Okogie and a Miles Bridges, I suppose. Got Nick Smith 9%, Fields at 12, so a little bit under there, but he's probably your guy. It's your best shot of having an outlier day. I just think that people will play him a little bit more than they should because Nick Smith had the good day the last time. Some of the Hornets were out. People are going to miss, though, that he had that day when it was Bridges and LaMelo out. When you get LaMelo and Mark Williams out, it's not the same situation for Nick Smith. So worry he's a little bit higher owned because of people kind of chasing that last Hornets skeleton crew day. But I think as a play, he's like an okay one to be around 10 to 15% of.
Alrighty. Well, we got through the Brooklyn part and the Charlotte part, which are the lowest owned team and highest owned teams on the slate. So now the slate will look a little bit different for the rest of the games that we talk about, save for when we get to the Cleveland Cavaliers and Washington Wizards, unfortunately. Shout out Joval. Game 2 is the Pistons, 7-point dogs in Indy, 232 total. We did get a little bit of news on Indy before we got started. We'll dig into that in a second, but let's start on the Pistons side where they're just their normal selves. We don't have any Pistons news to worry about, Jaden Ivey and nothing else. We also have no ownership really to the Pistons. Jalen Duren was getting a little bit of love this morning. That's gone. 8% ownership to Duren is the most for anybody on the Pistons on either site. We got 5 to Cade and very little else anywhere. Do you like anything here? Is Cade a little contrarian? I'm not seeing much from the Pistons.
I think Cade's contrarian, and I don't have him poorly projected. I mean, the rate boost that we always talk about with Jaden Ivey being out's been pronounced, and I generally do get more Cade. I would have Cade at 1.55 fantasy points per minute. So, like on paper, I don't mind him. But I think with the way the slate looks, there's other ways to spend your money, other ways that might not work out with Cade Cunningham being a priority. So I got him at 3.3% of my lineups compared to the field's 5. I think he's a nice tournament play. There's a couple of them, though. Honestly, a lot of the guys in this, like, 8 to 11K range or a little bit underowned, it feels like, because of ownership congregating for a few other spots. So like I like the idea of Cade more than I got him practically in my top 150. Got a lot of Jalen Duren in my top 150 though. Got him at 19% compared to the field's 8.4. He's been a good play lately. Does still feel like he could lose minutes to Isaiah Stewart at any given moment. But I think he's playing well enough. Minutes feel a little bit more secure, foul trouble, a little bit less persistent for him. So he's kind of your pivot point to J-Val, I would guess. I'd rather play J-Val, but I think that Duren at that price tag, I got him about 1/5 of my lineups, and I'm not going to run away from it.
Okay. I don't have anything else here for Detroit. I think Indiana is a much more interesting team to talk about for today because Andrew Nembhard is questionable with a thoracic spine sprain, which sounds like you would be out for your life if you had it. And then just before we got started, Benedict Mathurin, questionable now with an illness. There is some impact if both of those guys happen to end up out. As of right now, with them both in, we've got about 15% ownership coming into Siakam on both sites and then low single digits to everybody else. If everybody's in, are you expecting to get to the Pacers?
I'm getting the same 16 percentage Siakam. I guess I got technically 17. So a little bit above there. I don't usually get a lot of Indiana because of how their usage shakes out. So a little bit surprised to see that much, but I think the price tag works, matchup works, team total is pretty nice as well for a spot against Detroit. That's technically, a little bit of a pace down, I guess, though maybe not so much with how the Pacers have played and also the Pistons have played this year. But that's it for me. I got Siakam. I got 6% of Neesmith. I guess I'd get a little bit more if Mathurin were out. But Nemhart too, I suppose. But right now, I think these guys looks like a full rotation. Nobody stands out that much to you besides Siakam, who, if I had to guess, really the price tag that works well in being power forward more than it is Siakam being a smash play, because I don't even have him as a 5x value, and I'm getting him in that many lineups.
He looks fine to me. If he's in that 10 to 15% own range, I think it makes sense. It's going to be hard for us to like truly break down Indy just because like if one of the two guys are out, then I don't think there's going to be all that much impact. You get a couple more minutes to Neesmith, Shepard, McConnell, Toppin, Walker. I'm guessing it just spreads itself out. If they're both out, Nemhard and Mathurin, are you anticipating getting to any other pieces of the Pacers? Do you think that unlocks any value for you?
I would think Neesmith becomes more of a close play. I already have him being a little bit over 5x anyway, so I think he becomes more of a priority. Shepard would get more minutes, I presume, but I don't think would be a good enough play. Them only averaging under zero point 0.6 fantasy points a minute on the year. I would guess that Halliburton and Siakam, I mean, Siakam is chalk already. They would come up a little bit more for me. But really, I don't think there's a direct beneficiary besides maybe Neesmith then getting high 20s minutes, I guess. I assume he could play that now.
Yeah.
I think that'd probably be it for me. But even that, like, I'd rather have the other values we're going to talk about than really highlight throughout the video.
Yeah, I don't like you're going to have to give a lot of minutes to Ben Shepherd. He's a point 0.6 guy. That's not going to get it done. Toppin and Walker probably not going to get enough at that point, but make sure you stay tuned to Live Before Lock because they're going to get this news during the show. They'll be able to let you know if we create any additional value from Indy, but I don't have anything else for this team right now.
Yep, same pitch.
Alrighty, schedule for the rest of the day. Very easy. You guys know the drill. Eric and Greg are going to be up after this. They're going to take you from 6 to 7. They're going to react to all the news that comes in that hour, take your questions, go through everything you could possibly ask for in that hour. We have 3 games locking at 7, so that 6:30 to 7 o'clock window is going to be pretty hectic, especially right before those guys finish up, because we're going to have 4 more games at 7:30 that are going to be dropping news in that like 6:50 to 7:10 window. Just be there. Hit the like button too. You don't want to miss it. But we're not done then. We're going to playback tonight. It's a perfect playback slate. Multiple games on right at 7. Tons of news to react to, ownership changes, late swaps, all that good stuff, because this entire slate will be locked by the time we finish on playback. It's playback.tv/Stokastic. You could watch the games along with us if you have League Pass. It's totally free. If you don't have League Pass, we have VIP passes to give out, and we're doing some giveaways of some League Pass accounts. So make sure you're checking out our Twitter accounts to see where that comes in, but we're giving stuff away on the playback stream as well. So you might be able to catch yourself a League Pass account so you could watch these games. Worst case scenario, it's just like the deeper dive. You'll see Greg, you'll see myself. We'll be talking about everything. You just wouldn't be able to see the game. But if you have League Pass, you can. Playback's awesome. Come join us. Game number 3. Toronto Raptors. 6-point favorites in Washington, 230 total. Not too much going on here for Toronto. Q-tag Grady Dick, who's sick. That Dick, who's sick. That's fun. Q-tag Kelly Olynyk as well, right? Calf strain. We are going to need those pieces of information, but with everybody in, only 3 guys are getting ownership. And it's the 3 best players on the Raptors. Barnes, Barrett, Pirtle, all about 15% owned. Does one of those guys jump out more to you than the others? Because I have one of them better than the others.
So I have Barrett more than the field. I'm getting him at 18% compared to 13. He's been a big beneficiary of not having Quickly out there. Just shy of a 30% usage rate. And frankly, the price tag too being under 8K. Like I've mentioned it a few times, I view Barnes and Barrett similarly in terms of the projections on most slates. Barnes obviously contributes more in every category. Barrett more kind of a pure scorer. But I think Barrett's a little bit cheap, whereas Barnes, I think, is kind of appropriately priced. Happy to be kind of with the field on both guys, but I am over on Barrett. Unfortunately, I'm mostly Dickless today. I'm usually so full of Dick and so vibrant with it, with Quickly out. But Dick's price tags come up enough here. The minutes aren't projected quite as well, with Stokastic having him at 25 today. So I think it's not so much a Grady Dick spot right now. Barrett, Barnes, I think look good. And Pirtle, I got half the field of, but technically a nice spot for him as well. Your direct leverage really on JVal in the same game. If he rips 20 boards here, JVal probably got less. But I think Barnes and Barrett look like much better plays to me.
If Dick happens to be broken and not in, does it become a Bruce Brown day? 27 minutes 2 games ago, 29 minutes in their most recent affair. Shooting guard, small forward, 4,500. Feels like if there's no Grady Dick, it's going to be Bruce Brown season.
He's been averaging about 1 fantasy point per minute with quickly not on the court, which, as I mentioned before, like I feel like he's been kind of like the G League slash a couple of years ago when the Pistons had nobody left and Bruce Brown was like putting up 70 fantasy point days. I feel like he's being a little bit more that guy right now, whether it's to highlight himself for trade stuff or just because he was out for so long, you're kind of getting it out of your system. But I think Brown would be an interesting play. I don't know that he would start, I guess would be my concern, because you could theoretically go back to Agbaji and whatever. You could do something else there. So that'd be my concern. But I think Bruce Brown looks okay now, and I agree he would look better if he got those minutes vacated by Dick.
Benedict Mathurin out, Andrew Nemhard out. So that happened
Oh,
pretty quickly.
okay. Oh, there you go. Big. Everybody else on Indiana you don't really want to play day.
Yep. So live before lock will get those updates for you guys. I don't have much else to say about Toronto. We're going to need that news. I don't think the Kelly Olynyk news will matter all that much.
Agreed.
For the Wizards, so we've got like 10 to 15% ownership on Jordan Poole, Bilal Coulibaly, Kyle Kuzma, Keyshawn George, close to 10 on Bub Carrington. But the real talking point for the Wizards is that Alex Sarr is out for today. And by all accounts, we're expecting to get the Jonas Valanciunas start for this one and the backup run going to Rashawn Holmes. That is creating 40% ownership to Joe Val, 5,400 center only. So let's get Joe Val out of the way. What do you want to do here? Because to me, he looks awesome.
So Stokastic has him for just shy of 25 minutes, which feels light to me. He's played a lot of 28-minute stints in games without Sarr, up to 31 a couple games, I think, or at least one game. So it feels light, but I guess if you get him, if you protect him for any more minutes, he's going to be in literally every lineup. But I think he should be in maybe not literally every lineup, but he'd be another guy too, where I'd say put him in every lineup. Like he and Okogie, I think, are the base for a lot of stuff I would do today. J Val, I would have today at about 36 fantasy points, which a little bit up on Stokastic, but not that much. He's averaged 1.33. The big inhibitor is just that Sarr has to play a certain amount of minutes. And, YouTube chat's going to love it. Revenge game, even though they're not in Toronto a couple teams ago, but still something there for him, I'm sure. But he's just in a good situation. Like they seemingly have to play a big man to some amount. He's played good minutes whenever you haven't had Sarr out. There's no Bagley. Holmes is clearly not a priority player for them by any stretch. So I think J Val is one of your better chalk plays on the slate. The big thing with him is like, do you want to go cheaper to Diabate or do you want to pay up for the really good centers like Jokic? But besides that, like there's no reason to not play J-Val, I think, on the slate. And I would much rather lock him than have him in 0% of lineups, I think.
Yeah, he's my second ranked guy on the slate. He's averaged 25 minutes in his 8 starts. Every once in a while you get that like 19 or 21-minute game where he just doesn't play the fourth quarter. He gets his 3 rotations and they park his ass, which is what I remember happening on January 8th when I played him. 21 minutes, 14 points, 14 boards. He was getting all of his own rebounds like he was Angel Reese. A really good time to watch. Anyway, I think 25 minutes makes a lot of sense. Gives you a little cover for the downside, gives you a little cover for the upside, but he looks fantastic. I think the ownership is completely warranted. Goal score of 36.5 fantasy points. I think he does that like 40 something percent of the time. He just looks great. But what else looks great for Washington? Because they're getting some ownership across those other 5 guys. Do you like any of these dudes more than the others?
I do like Jordan Poole a good amount. I'm getting actually 2x the field on Poole, projected for 17%. I'm getting him at 34. I'm actually a little bit up on Kuzma too. So kind of getting the game environment overall, I guess, with the amount of Toronto on that side that I've gotten and a good amount of Washington here. A little surprised by the Poole ownership, but he does project well for me. I have him at just shy of 40 fantasy points today. So not surprised by it. But these guys look good. I'm low on Bilal Coulibaly, who I'd usually like as a play. You kind of get as a low-owned option, shooting guard, small forward. But on a day where I'm getting Poole and Kuzma, I guess I should be low on Bilal. So Wizards quietly a team to me that's going to be in a lot of lineups, I think.
Yeah. If I'm ranking it, I think Poole separates from those other guys. I don't have anything separating Coulibaly, Kuzma, George, and Carrington relative to their salaries. Like, I'm happy to get to any one of them. They all seem like they should be about 10% guys, but Poole is the one that jumps out to me. So I'm with you there. Oh, Bulls and Celtics. The Bulls are 2 touchdown underdogs against the Patriots. Oh, I'm sorry. It's the Boston Celtics in this one. 228 total. Chicago, though, not bringing their best player to this one. Zach LaVine is out, as is Torrey Craig. He is not the best player, though. But we do also have a Q tag on Kobe White, so this might end up looking even worse depending on how that breaks. But one thing is for sure, if Kobe White is in, no one is rostering the Chicago Bulls. 2% to Patrick Williams is the most ownership of anybody. I got Dosunmu to 6% optimal. I find Chicago very unappealing. But if White ends up out, we might just have something.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think you need one more guy out here with how the total looks, the rotation looks, where you have enough guys projected to play minutes. You're not really getting the boost from Levine you'd expect with how much he plays and the usage he takes away. The other guys kind of filling enough with usage, assist, upside, all that stuff. Giddey has averaged 1.2 fantasy points a minute in court time without Levine this year. I don't think it's a big enough sample size to really want to go crazy on, but it does stand out for that if you want to take a tournament shot on a guy that just doesn't project that well. That's really the big issue here is with Kobe White in, they all just don't project that well. It's not a great total. They're huge underdogs. They're playing one of the toughest defenses in the league, on paper. So Chicago finds a way to hang in these games enough that if you wanted to ignore projections, take shots, you could. But I just don't see it. These guys aren't. It's weird. Like Levine is such a high usage guy. Him being out, opening up that minutes, you would think you get somebody looking better, and just nobody does. And the rates also don't support anybody being a better play either.
Now, it doesn't help that this is a gigantic pace down spot for Chicago, and they're facing potentially a full strength Boston team, but maybe not. So it's just not that great of a matchup. We'll see what it looks like if Kobe White happens to get ruled out. But then we go to the Boston end of it. We've got a Q tag on Sam Hauser, a Q tag on Horford, a Q tag on Tatum. Only Tatum and Brown are getting any love. 10% to Tatum, 15% to Brown. I like Jaylen Brown today no matter what. I think he looks pretty good. I think that ownership is warranted. He's going to look way better at 7,600 if Tatum happens to be out. Do you want anything from Boston other than Tatum and Brown if they're all in? It's hard to hypothesize depending on who's out after that.
Yeah, I would say for Jaylen Brown right now, I think he looks like a pretty good play. Have him at about 17% compared to the Fields, rounded up 16. So not a big stand there, but like he looks good with Tatum in. So if Tatum's out, he's going to be an absolute smash play for me. And I'm sure the field will pick up the ownership too. So maybe that comes out in the wash. Porzingis looks good enough to me to play right now. I'm at about 9%. So up on the Fields, rounded up 7. Not really big stands in favor of these guys, but it is a pace up spot, high total matchup, all that. So, or high total on the Boston side at the very least. So I like these guys. They'll become much better plays if Tatum is out. I'll get more Derek White then. I'll get, I think, some shots on Drew Holiday and Peyton Pritchard. But I think Jaylen Brown, if Tatum were out and Porzingis would become core plays, at the very least Jaylen Brown would. With them all in right now, I think they're all pretty good tournament plays. And Tatum himself, if he plays under 10% owned, like he projects well enough. Price tag's not awful. I think he's a pretty good play if he does play because of the Q tag carrying with him all day.
Yeah, I like Tatum. I like Brown. They both look good. I'd say Tatum's a little underowned. I don't think the Horford or Hauser news will really matter all that much on this slate. We've got too much good center value to like prop up Luke Cornett. It's if Tatum is out, then we're getting bumps to Brown, to White, to Holiday, and things look a lot better. Kobe White in, by the way.
There we go.
So keep your eyes peeled for this Boston news because if Tatum is out, everything changes for Boston. Otherwise, play Tatum and Brown and not much else. Now we get to the second most owned team of the slate, the Cleveland Cavaliers, 7-point favorites in Miami, 225 total. We're getting a little bit of ownership into this one. So it's a little like while I say Cleveland's getting the second most ownership, it's kind of deceiving. We don't have Darius Garland today, who's just going to be out for rest. Sam Merrill is questionable. LeVert is already out. Okoro is out. Dean Wade is out. So we're getting 10% ownership to Max Strus, 10% ownership to Donovan Mitchell, basically nothing to Jared Allen and Evan Mobley. But there just so happens to be 70% ownership coming into Chris Spags' favorite play, Ty Jerome, 4,400, point guard only. And he is the number one play on the slate to me as well. I got his target score at 31 for a $4,400 player. That is also where I have his projection. He's the best play of the slate.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's the third part of my value guys I think should be in every lineup. It's him, Makogi, it's J-Val. Ty Jerome has been great all year. I've just talked about it. The minutes have gotten weird at times throughout the year as they've played Garland, Mitchell a little bit more. But generally, this team does want, two of the guards out there handling the ball. Even if Ty Jerome wouldn't get the start here, which I would hope he would, but if he didn't, I still think he ends up earning the minutes throughout the course of the game. I would have him at 34 and change fantasy points. I would have him at 86% of my lineups right now, my top 150. I think he's the best play in the slate, like Josh said. And yeah, if he fails, I think the fail outcome would be more for Mitchell, more for Mobley, more for Jared Allen, and then maybe Craig Porter steals a few more minutes than you expect. But Jerome has been good enough this year. Whenever he gets court time, he produces, other than like one or two times. But he's legit put up 50 fantasy points in no time. I've I've benefited enough from Ty Jerome this year, as Josh hinted at, that I love Ty Jerome, play him a lot in slates. This is not the time I'm not going to play him, is really how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think the only scary part for rostering him is if he gets like 24 minutes and they just play Craig Porter like 20 minutes, which is certainly on the table, but well worth the risk considering Ty Jerome plays 20 minutes just about every night anyway, as long as like one dude is out. So he looks great. What do you do with the rest of Cleveland, if anything?
Kind of matching the field on it. I got 13% Max Strus compared to 11. I got 9% Mitchell compared to 11. A little bit under on Mobley, who's barely being owned, as Josh mentioned. A little bit under on Allen, who's barely being owned. Got Jalen Tyson 13%. I'll never forget the day that he and Antonio Reeves went head to head in a dog shit Cavs Pelicans game where those guys both put up 50 fantasy points. Tyson at least does some stuff, so him filling in for some of the wing minutes could be good there, but nobody is a priority besides Ty Jerome. If you get a few more guys out for Cleveland, like Merrill's questionable right now, I believe. If he were out, a few more minutes to go around there, but I think really it's mostly Ty Jerome here as like your defining play of the slate.
I couldn't agree more, man. He looks fantastic. Now on the Miami side, they're without some dudes. You might have heard of it. Jimmy Butler not available for the Miami Heat today, and likely ever again. Tyler Hero available, Jaime Haka is available, Duncan Robinson available. 7% ownership to Ware, 7% ownership to Bam. Those are the two highest numbers of anybody on DraftKings. Uh, I like Ware quite a bit more than the field here, but I don't know if this is just a center thing because there's a lot of different options. But if he's 7% owned, and we've got these heavy chalk-ish centers, I'm a little interested in him here. Not the best matchup in the world, but I think he might still be underpriced at 6,200.
Yeah, I got 7% of him, so a little bit over. I was getting more earlier today, and I think it's because, the J-Val, crush of value is a little bit hard to ignore. Got a lot more Diabate, too, this run, and I'd rather kind of take, I think, the mid-price shot at Ware, too. So, like Diabate, I get. I don't want to be crazy over the field on Diabate because, like, he just hasn't been a producer like those other Hornets centers have been. But I do think Ware has been good enough, coming off of what was first down game, really, in this run as a starter. I think going back there makes sense. But I'm not getting there naturally in my top 150. So about 7% out of bio for me, about 7% Ware, about 7% Nikola Jovic. Didn't get any Tyler Hero, who's obviously the big winner of no Jimmy Butler out there, but I don't think the rates took enough of a jump here in a spot versus Cleveland with the total not being great for Miami to force my way there. So yeah, I'll get these guys a little bit, but nothing that's a big stand.
I think people should get to a little bit more Ware. That's my only take for Miami. I don't have anything else, but I don't know. I have him. Maybe I'm just crazy. Let me look at his prop market quickly, just to see if I have him like wildly overprojected. Because I don't think that I do, and if I don't, I'm going to be more firm with the take that I'm giving right now. But just to double check, we've got Ware projected for, or we've got his points prop at 14. Yeah, I might be a hair high on him, but I don't know. I'm a believer, man. I like the double bigs. Bam and Ware better than Allen and Mobley? We'll find out.
Yeah, it's a real question. It's a big question people are asking about this game.
I mean, Bam is the best one of the four, is he not?
At this year? I don't
No,
think so.
not this year. That would be Evan Mobley.
Yeah, it's Mobley and I think Allen, and then Ware, and then Bam.
No, Bam is, well, we can have that conversation on a different day, but there's no chance I'm putting Jared Allen ahead of Bam Adebayo.
Okay.
Can't do it. Too big of a Bam stan. Big fan.
Just this year has not been the Bam year to be a Bam stan, I feel like.
No, it seems like maybe the behind the scenes things, maybe that was affecting Bam. Maybe this is what he needed to excise Jimmy Butler. I don't know. I'm making up excuses for my boy.
He was having fun with Ware at the podium the other day because Ware was like, "Oh, I get a lob if I see the ball coming towards me." Like they're having fun. I'm not letting Bam escape no blame here. He's regressed as a player. I feel like a lot over the last year and change.
Ouch. Not that I disagree, but I don't want to talk about Idris like that, so can't do it. What we will talk about is Portfolio EV and OddsShopper.com. It's the absolute best way that you guys can be sports betting or using pick'em sites. We take a market-based approach to beating the books, and you can get our entire OddsShopper Portfolio EV package for a week if you've never signed up before. Link in the description. We give you expected win rate on all the props that you see, expected value, bet size calculator for you based on your bankroll size. We have parlay builders. We have odds boost calculators. Shop around for the best lines across whatever sports books or pick'em sites you're using. You can mass bet. Say there's 10 recommended bets on DraftKings. You can click one button. It'll load it all to DK for you. Drop your bet sizes in. You can get that in within a minute. This is the way to build your bankroll at this point. No more cash games in DFS if you don't want to. Use the slow trickle of plus EV betting that we're going to be giving you here with OddsShopper and the Portfolio EV tool. Slowly build up your bankroll. You're seeing Greg do it in his bankroll challenge video. It's the same principle here. Then use those winnings for your GPP shots. Try to grab that huge payout if you can. So link is there. Come on in, man. Portfolio EV is the tool. It's the best in the industry. The Denver Nuggets are 2.5 point dogs in New York, 242 total. Not too much to talk about here on the Denver side. Everybody that's normally available is Josh Hart on the other side is questionable once again. I think we all just kind of assume that when Josh Hart is questionable, he's just going to play. So 10% ownership to Jokic, 10% ownership to Murray, 10% ownership to Westbrook. Essentially nothing else for Denver. That's an oddly low number for Jokic when it comes to ownership here in a matchup that's decent for him if it's not a pace down spot. And we have a ton of value. But unfortunately, a lot of our really good point per dollar plays are also centers. So how do you manage this? Because I'm not sure that I think Jokic's ownership is wrong, but boy, oh boy, does it feel light.
Yeah, so accounting for the matchup today, I have Jokic projected at 1.92 fantasy points per minute and 69.5 fantasy points. So I'll be getting Jokic still. I got Jokic in about a quarter of my lineups, which I'm pretty happy with that amount here. I do always have Jokic a little bit higher than projected than Stokastic does. I don't really know why. I think because of how bad Jamal Murray has been this year. I weight the season projections more, and it kind of throws more Jokic's way because he's been good. But I have no issue doing that. A slate where there's going to be crazy value. I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of lineups today that are J-Val and Diabate. If you can come over the top with Jokic and put up 70 on those guys and get better value on the wing or at guard, I think you win the slate that way. So I like J-Val, but like point being is like you can go to Jokic and get a lot more points and get a lot more secure production. And it is a marquee matchup in MSG versus Towns, whose defense is certainly lacking. I think Jokic is one of the best plays in the slate in terms of like, what does this value get you? You could pay it for Jokic. You could probably pay it for Jokic and Tyrese Maxey, who's another play I like a lot. Saw that in a lot of the top ROI lineups on Stokastic. The semi ran there. I think Jokic is one of the better plays, and you can get to him more easily than usual here with his price tag up.
I find him fascinating today. And he's not even like the only pay up center. We still got to talk about Wemby yet. So yeah, I find Jokic to be fascinating, but you need a lot. 71 is the target score at 12,300. But I mean, that's like almost an average Jokic day. It doesn't take much for him to blow that out of the water. What do you do with Murray and Westbrook here?
I'm low on Murray. I mean, Murray's averaging 1.01 fantasy points per minute on the year. Like he'll spike those random days, but I'm willing to go there more in a day where he's like unowned. He's going to be owned by about 11% of the field. So not flat fading him. I got a 7.3% in my top 150. Like I'm getting some exposure there, but if I had to fade Murray or Jokic, I would fade Murray. I think I just don't love him as a player, even though he's spiked the random big days lately. Just game to game, it doesn't feel the most reliable compared to how he was in the past. I'm getting 2x the field on Westbrook though, and I do think that's also the push pull where if you don't get Murray, you get Westbrook. That sort of makes sense with how that all goes. Westbrook, I think a little bit cheap, still being in that $6,300 range. So for Westbrook, I'll go there. Nothing else here. It's kind of Jokic or Westbrook for me with that little bit of a taste of Jamal Murray. If you got Michael Porter, I wouldn't be mad at you, but Brown probably wouldn't point chase that. I think it's the top three here, and I really would prefer Jokic and Westbrook over everybody else.
I actually have them all relatively close to each other in optimal and boom rates, but Jokic and Westbrook do slightly edge out Murray here. So I think we're on the exact same page for Denver. I like it. Play Jokic, everybody. What a take, you know? We're really giving out the goods. Hey, everybody, just in case you didn't hear it, we've got the angle on the best possible play for you today. You might not have heard of him, Nikola Jokic. Think about it.
But to see him though at like 1.92 fantasy points per minute for me is my projection. Like that's a lot. I don't get that. I don't get that high very often for my projections.
Yeah.
I think for Jokic, it's a really steep projection for me. And yeah, look, it's Jokic and MSG. Why not?
It is a very steep projection. I will agree with you there.
But is it an unreasonable one? No, I don't think so.
Too steep.
If it gets me 2x the field on Jokic, I'll take it. I don't care.
I agree with completely. But we also have another center on the opposite side of this one who arguably projects better relative to salary. That would be Karl Anthony Towns, who's 17% owned. That's more than Jokic right now. Everybody else is 9 or below, 9 for Hart, 9 for Brunson, essentially nothing for Anunoby and Bridges. Obviously, if Hart is out, we might get this one looking a little bit different. But if they're all in, how do you manage the Knicks? Ooh, hey, the dick is out. So
Oh no, the dick is we want the dick in usually, but that's going to open up some theoretical value for Toronto, I suppose.
Kelly
But yeah, for
Olynyk also out, by the way.
Oh, all right. So there you go for Toronto. More for the deeper for the live for lock table, not for the deeper dive. For
No.
New York right now, not getting a lot of these guys. I'm getting 7% Towns. I'm high projection wise on Towns. Actually have him and Jokic as the same, being a 5.7x value today. So actually a little bit surprised. I'm not at least with the field on Towns, but with the Diabate amount going up, I guess that's kind of hurting things a little bit for me. I think Towns is a good play. I really have no issue with him. I play him a lot more than Brunson. I would play him more than Brunson today, and I am playing him at 7% compared to Brunson's 8. So that doesn't feel great for me. Yeah, I like Towns more than I got him in my top 150. I guess that's really all I could say. I think he's a good play.
I like him. I honestly think that Towns looks better than Jokic does just because of salary. I mean, you're saving $2,500 by getting to Towns here in a better version of this matchup. This is a better side for the Knicks than it is for Denver just because of the pace of this game. So, if I'm being honest, I prefer Towns to Jokic. I would imagine I will regret that statement later when Jokic drops 97 fantasy points like he is wont to do, but I do not mind at all getting to Towns. I don't have like any priority interest for the Knicks. Any one of Harden, Anunoby, Bridges, and Brunson just always works for me because of the way that they put out their playing time, especially in a situation like this. They're always ripe to be playing 38 plus in a competitive matchup like this one.
I know we're low on time here, but is there a world where a Towns Jokic lineup can win it? Because like I know I got some Jokic
Yeah.
Maxi and similar price tags, and it's tough with the push pull of two centers in the same game, but they play enough, and there should be enough stats going around with the total being where it is that I feel like I could play that a little bit today.
Yeah, I mean, both of them could very easily rely on scoring. You know, they take a little bit from each other from a rebounding perspective, but Jokic is going to get there a lot by dropping dimes. You know, if he's pulling a triple double and he's got like 11 assists aren't really affecting Karl Anthony Towns in any way. So, no, I don't think it's crazy at all. I mean, these are two of the more likely highest scorers of the slate. So, I don't hate pairing them if you can. There's enough value everywhere else to be able to do it too. Sacramento Kings in the news. Might not have this same starting five over the next 2 weeks. They're 8-point favorites in Philadelphia, though, today, 231 total. We basically have like 10% ownership to Sabonis, DeRozan, Fox, Monk, and Murray. Very little else going on here. They're sort of like the West Coast Knicks. These guys just, they play their starting five a lot, and they don't play many other guys all that much. Who stands out to you from the starters? Which direction do you want to go here for the Kings?
So weirdly, I'm getting 20% Sabonis, which is not often the thing for me. The minutes have been up for him. He's been honestly, I would argue, a better fantasy product overall under Doug Christie. I don't know why, but he's doing better. He obviously hit the near 70 fantasy point upside last game. So yeah, I'm going to Sabonis a little bit here. Got him at 20% compared to the field's 12, which surprises me because I was not there before. Not getting a lot of Fox, who usually is one of my better projected Kings. Obviously in this spot here, the trade stuff hanging around him, the narratives, I don't know how you really would want to go his way, but maybe he shows off for his potential acquiring team. 7% owned feels a little bit light for Fox, and I'm only getting 3. With the field and everybody else here, well, besides DeRozan, I got 9% DeRozan compared to Fields 13. These guys are all coming in like 10 to 15-ish owned, it looks like, and I have no issue being with the field on them, but none of them scream out like, oh, this is the guy to go to on the slate. But as Josh mentioned, they're playing more minutes, good total. Philadelphia is not very good at this point. I think Sacramento looks as good as any team on the slate, just not with as much ownership.
I have their ranks right now as DeRozan, Murray, Sabonis, Fox, Monk, but they're separated by slivers between each one of them. I just, Philly stinks. Might be getting Caleb Martin back, so they stink like 1% less than they normally do, but it's a great spot here for Sacramento, other than the fact that it is next level slow from a matchup perspective. Philly is 28th in pace. Sacramento is 12th. So they are crawling to the bottom in this one. And then we talk about the Philly team. Caleb Martin ruled out. So I spoke that one immediately into existence.
Really? You made that happen?
Caleb Martin right back to the bench. So we are getting the exact same available players for Philly today that we had yesterday. We had 15% ownership coming into Maxi, 35 to Oubre, and nothing to the rest of these guys. We might be able to bump up Eric Gordon, Justin Edwards, and Ricky Council now after that news. But what were you doing with chalky Kelly Oubre?
I was getting a lot of them. I got them in half my lineups here. The one thing that stood out to me is like Kelly Oubre has played, high 30s minutes, played a little bit less yesterday because the game was out of hand. They brought those guys in briefly for the fourth quarter, and then kind of took them back out because the game was over. So theoretically, like there's not a reason like on the back to back here that you're afraid of playing Oubre. Like I think the minutes projection for him being a little bit under. Well, is he under? No, they moved him up a little bit. Before it was at 35. I think the minutes still gets a high 30s because they just didn't burn him out yesterday because of that game and how it worked out versus the Lakers. So I like Oubre enough. I'm willing to be there. Caleb Martin being out is only going to help that. Maxey, I got less of him because I guess I'm getting more Sabonis and getting more of the centers coming over the top, which I don't love. I think Maxey's the best play whenever you have, Paul George and Embiid out. Not a big surprise there, but like he legit has crazy upside. And yesterday he put up 40 real life points and barely did anything in terms of steals, in terms of assists and rebounds in particular. So I think there's a higher ceiling for him to hit in a spot like Sacramento if he keeps his game competitive. So I like Maxey more. I'm going to prioritize getting more exposure there, but definitely a big stand in favor of Oubre and Gershon Yabusele. I got 5%. I like Yabusele when there's no bigs left, but he's not a must-have play on the slate.
Do you think you're getting to Edwards and Council now that Caleb Martin is out?
Yeah, I think I'll get to probably a good amount of both. Council to me yesterday felt like the leverage against Edwards when we found out who was starting. Like it's the same thing here. I'll take shots at both guys. I imagine their minutes projections won't be terribly far off, or they shouldn't be. But I think they're both okay plays. Edwards gets hot from three sometimes. Council a little bit better of an all-around player. Back to back, not pace down spot. I don't love Council as much as I did yesterday. Kind of feels like more of an Edwards spot, but they're functionally to me like kind of the same play.
Okay. Make sure you're checking out those projections when we get the updates for Caleb Martin, because we're going to be moving around like 20 something minutes to Justin Edwards, Ricky Council, Reggie Jackson, Kyle Lowry, and Jeff Doughton. So that should be a fun time for everybody involved. We're through 7 games. We've got 2 to go. We've got about 1,900 of you in here right now, 200 likes. It's about where we were yesterday. I asked you guys if we could get to 300, and then I didn't pay attention to anything. Not only did you get to 300, you got to 400, which was pretty awesome to see. So it's on to you guys now, to the 1,600 plus that are in watching this show. Hit that thumbs up. I know the live before lock guys appreciate it a ton when they see those big like numbers when they get in the door. Dallas Mavericks, 2 8 o'clock games, by the way. Dallas Mavericks 1-point favorites in New Orleans, 233 total. There's basically zero ownership coming into these 2 late games, which is an unfun dynamic. So maybe that's an angle that people can take. Dallas has, for the most part, the same rotation they've had lately. Although Najee Marshall is questionable for this one. It'd be nice if they could get him back. Dwight Powell still out, Lively out, Maxi Kleber out, Luka out. The interesting piece of their injury report, Dante Exum is doubtful, which means he is getting close to a return. He has been out for ages with right wrist surgery. So hopefully they can get him back in the next week. They could use him. 10% ownership to PJ Washington. 10% ownership to a $7,400 Daniel Gafford. What do you like from Dallas? Because I don't like anything.
Yeah, I don't love anything here. Gafford's price tag is up enough now. PJ Washington, I got about 5% of, but under the field on him, his price tag's up. I've liked these guys a lot. Like I've played Gafford all the way up the salary chain. Washington played a lot. Last slate have played him more than not up the salary chain. But now we're fully priced in for life without Luka, without some of the other guys being in. And you are getting some more bodies in like Najee Marshall, who's been missing some time. So not crazy about the Mavs today. The matchup looks pretty good. The total looks pretty good. New Orleans, not a defense or situation you're worried about. The pace pretty flat between the two teams, but the Mavs to me not coming up very much, and I think they're interesting tournament options because they're as good of a play as they've been. It's just now you have to pay what they're probably actually worth.
There's nothing left to squeeze out of these Mavs at this point. Even if Najee Marshall ends up out, like I don't think we're going to be clicking Omax's name or Kessler Edwards or Jaden Hardy. I just don't think there's anything left here at this point. These prices are all where they should be. I don't like if you get Gafford or Washington or Irving, that's totally reasonable. They can be in lineups, but there's not a single priority here. There's also not a single priority on the opposite side. Jordan Hawkins is out with a non-COVID illness. I'm really glad that in 2025 we're still making sure we know whether it's COVID or not, because you definitely don't know it when you have it. Brandon Ingram out, Herb Jones out, DeJounte Murray available. 5% ownership to Murphy, 5 to Zion, actually. Nothing higher than that. I actually have them both at 9% optimal, so arguably a hair under-owned, but I don't think the Pelicans side of this one looks good either.
I'm getting Zion a little bit. I'm getting him at 12%, Fields at 5. He's been just good this entire year when Ingram's off the court. He's been good overall, averaging 1.5 fantasy points per minute. The issue is like he does hurt everybody else outlay a little bit, where DeJounte Murray, I now don't get him basically when Zion's on the slate. Same thing for Trey Murphy. Like these guys are probably a little expensive for what Zion's been doing. But Zion on the year, 36% usage, 33% assist rate, 16% rebound rate. He's been great, and you're playing a Dallas team that is honestly better than they should be without Luka. But still like a team that can certainly be beatable, I think. So I like Zion here as a tournament option, and being under 9K salary, I think is good for him right now. Everybody else I got none of. So yeah, should look better, you'd think, with Jordan Hawkins out. But these guys, to me, no value really approached anything. It's just tournament upside for Zion at a good price tag.
Yeah, just like I didn't get anybody to double digit optimal. I guess Trey Murphy is probably like my preferred option just because of position and price, but I thought this was going to be a spot where I could get a little bit more ownership in the late games and, try to have an angle for additional swaps at 7:30 and then heading into 8, but I mean, these are four of the like most or the least owned teams on the slate. Dallas looks unappealing, Pelicans look unappealing, and then we get to the final game. The Clippers, 4-point favorites in San Antonio, 220 total. Also incredibly unappealing for the Clippers. Chris Dunn's still out. Otherwise, they're at full strength, and them being at full strength is pretty tricky because they spread their minutes out. 6% ownership to James Harden is the most of anybody on DraftKings. We are getting 18% ownership to Kawhi Leonard right now on FanDuel, though, so keep your eye on that one. Do you like anything here for the Clippers? We saw Kawhi get some increased minutes last time out. I still think he's probably a little too expensive to get to him, but nothing is jumping out here. I think Amir Coffey is my like preferred option, and he's awful on a per minute basis.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I really didn't get much here. I got 1% of Derek Jones, as I'm sure just the salary works, and a power forward for 4,100. Kawhi has been playing at about a 1.03 fantasy point per minute pace, probably due to shoot a little bit better, but I don't know that we're getting the same Kawhi. We're definitely not getting high minutes anyway, so I don't think he's a play I want to go to. Harden, I guess I got 2% of him. He's just not priced for Kawhi, playing about 30 minutes in a game. Spot versus San Antonio, it is a pace up technically, but it's not really a high pace spot, and they're playing a defense that's like about league average. You're not getting a big boost there. I don't think the Clippers look that great here. I think they're kind of in no man's land price wise. Maybe somebody gets here in a tournament option, but I probably won't be playing them very much, whoever it is.
Yeah, it's just God, I wish we could reorder some of these games because I mean, I rarely get to the Clippers anyway when they're essentially at full strength, so I'm not surprised. I'm a little surprised that I'm not finding San Antonio interesting in any way. They're at full strength. 4% ownership to an $11,100 Victor Wembanyama. That's the most of anybody on the Spurs. 4 to Vassell as well. Sohan is here. They're really starting to limit some of these bench minutes, but these guys' prices are sort of where they're supposed to be. Is the angle to just get to Wemby and hope that today's a Wemby day? Because I don't know what you get to from San Antonio.
Yeah, the tough part for me with Wemby is just like I have him lower than Towns straight up. I have him lower than Jokic by, I mean, for me, it's legit like about 20 fantasy points. I know it's not right, but like I have Wemby low. The Spurs are full strength. It's a down pace matchup. Clippers are a good defensive team. Like it just doesn't look like the Wemby smash spot. For the tournament part of it, like I get it. If you want to play Wemby and just hope you're getting him at 5% owned and he beats everybody out when there's going to be fairly congregated chalk around a few plays and good ownership for guys like Towns and good ownership for cheap centers, he fits the theory of what we talked about here, just coming over the top of the value and paying a good center and playing a good center. But I just projection wise, I can't get there. I have him as a 4.5x value. Like he looks nowhere close. These other guys will look like fantastic plays. And, maybe that's the issue. Maybe I'm just being a lemming and falling off a cliff like everybody else. But I think he looks low owned for a reason.
Yeah, it's not that I think that he looks good. He doesn't grade out well. 6% optimal, a 20% chance of 65 fantasy points, which is 10 and a half fantasy points more than I have him projected for. It's hard. I thought with all this value, we could be taking a different look at Jokic and Wemby, and that's just not happening. I think Boston's going to look really interesting if Tatum gets ruled out because I think Jaylen Brown's going to end up like really heavily owned, and we're still going to have very little ownership going to these like higher end centers thanks to Joval and Diabate, and I feel like I'm missing some other center idiot somewhere, but I don't know. These 8 o'clock games in total, the 8 o'clock games are projected for 69% ownership. I mean, that's barely one dude from all four of those teams in a lineup. It's just not, it's not good. So maybe a Dallas, New Orleans, Clippers, San Antonio, like late stack into some swaps is the angle to take, but they certainly don't grade out well on paper.
Yeah, I mean,
I
like if you're gonna
like
take a
this slate, but
shot,
it's gross.
Dallas, New Orleans is the one to take a shot at more. Like I feel like Clippers, San Antonio feels like a better real life game than, and even then with how the Clippers play, maybe not. Like it feels like a better real life game than a fantasy game. Dallas, New
Yeah.
Orleans, like there's a good total. You have guys who put up outlier days. It's just prices are tough. For the Clippers and Spurs, it's just like they project terribly. They don't seem to be appropriately priced for the totals in the matchup. So I would favor Dallas and New Orleans, but I'm with you. Like it does feel odd that there's just no ownership going to these two late games. That something makes a winning lineup. You got to think.
Well, 9 games up, 9 games down. I believe there is a live before lock show coming up after this one. You guys got it up to 358 likes, which means just by saying this, I think 42 more of you can be able to hit that thumbs up and get us to 400. Spags, tell the people where to find you.
You can follow me at Chris Spags. You also check out my YouTube channel at Splash Play NBA every day, Monday to Friday at 4 p.m. I go there live, talk about my projections, compare them to Stokastics, look at some betting markets, try to find the must plays for everything there, and check it out. And good luck tonight, guys. It's a fun slate here. It's a lot of value. It's just lock in Ty Jerome, lock in J Val, lock in Josh Okogie. Call it a day. Just play whoever at that point.
There we go, everybody. Live before lock coming up next, and then playback at 7 p.m. Good luck, everybody. Thank you for getting to 400 likes. Talk to you later.
Build your bankroll with Portfolio EV from OddsShopper. Use the mass entry tool to enter hundreds of profitable bets a day with just a couple taps of the finger in the OddsShopper app. And have confidence in knowing the bets you're placing have been profitable long-term by analyzing the historical ROI on every bet from every market with the EV results tool. From there, just create your own custom portfolios, simply add the bet types you want to see each day, and watch the profits roll in. Subscribe today on the OddsShopper app or at OddsShopper.com.
about that? How about that? God, I'm there. I'm literally there.
You know, most producers get the talent like coffee and stuff.
You talk so much more than me at the most inopportune times. I just can't stand you today.
That was Eric talking to Jordan Klein, not myself, by the way. Just in case you guys are
Probably applies to both.
We're really, Jordan doesn't do enough for us. If you're doing like most other marquee shows with big viewers, they get, yeah, exactly. It's like Cartman playing World of Warcraft. Most producers are useful. They're helpful. They do stuff like get the talent coffee. Not around here. Here.
We gave Jordan Klein power, and Jordan Klein abuses it on the daily. He puts stupid memes together of me. He clips me saying AD or ED. I don't care. I just can't stand you today.
That was a big debate, though.
Kobe White limited to 25 to 28 minutes. I'm going to put him in for 27. Move on. All right.
Yeah, Kobe White is going to play. As you just, we got news right out of the gate here. Kobe White is going to be playing, although he's going to be playing limited minutes. We do have some other news items to hit on as well, but just because this is coming up right here, and by the way, if you guys haven't done it yet, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow all of our different Twitter channels as well, /X, whatever it is that you prefer to call that social media site. Follow us at Stokastic_NBA, follow us at Stokastic_com, go and follow us over our OddsShopper Portfolio EV account, follow our OddsShopper accounts, just ways to get more information from us. Right off the bat here, though, Eric, we just got this piece of news, and it's a pretty big slate. We got a lot of spots to choose from. With Kobe White being limited, clearly we're not going to be wanting to roster him. Is this going to change anything about anybody else on Chicago? Brutal matchup against the Celtics as well.
Yeah, it's a brutal matchup, but you don't have Zach LaVine. I think that's pretty important. And Kobe White, he's the guy who leads this team in usage with Zach LaVine off the floor. So any minutes that you're going to rip him off and be able to potentially give that usage elsewhere, at least gives it some utility. And I mean, we've got some pretty interesting chalk, I would say. I'd say we have some good chalk too, but some interesting chalk, looking at you, Josh Okogie. But I keep looking at the Chicago team, and I'm like, I have to mind something out with Zach LaVine out. They're all low owned. If you're only going to get like 27, 28 minutes tops here of Kobe White, I think there's got to be something that comes to the top. I'm just going to rerun some stuff, giving a little bit more usage towards Vooch, a little bit more usage towards Io. I mean, they're all 1-2% owned on a slate that's massive, but that being said, we're looking for like 1 point of deviation in a 70,000 plus person tournament on DraftKings tonight. So I think there's something to be said about maybe entertaining a bull or two.
Definitely not a good matchup. Not a good matchup on the road against the Celtics. Blowout risk. It is afoot there. But yeah, we got Kobe White limited. You mentioned the Zach LaVine situation. Doesn't really show up in lineups due to the Chicago Bulls in the last Sims run I ran, but updating everything now, maybe things will change once we get the projections update and, you know, Kobe White being on a, can you actually, Jordan, pull up the projections and sort by the Chicago Bulls? I'm not sure what it is off the top of my head that we had Kobe White in for minutes before. So yeah, just go check Kobe White. And yeah, Chicago
obviously Jordan
Bulls.
Klein doesn't spend much time on the projections page either.
So we had Kobe White in for, is that 29 minutes? It's a little hard to see over.
A little bit high. Taking it down to. Gonna add those over to Ball.
So yeah, it'll come down by a couple of minutes. Maybe Josh Giddey gets a little bit more. I would assume a little bit more, although I don't know how interesting it's going to make them at their price points in this matchup. I think it's going to be tough for me to get to the Chicago Bulls, Eric. I hear you on there being some contrarian pieces we could consider. I certainly don't imagine I'm going to prioritize anything here, though.
God, no, definitely not. It's just the first piece of news that we had to kind of jumpstart the show. I was mad at Jordan Klein and I wanted to talk about something else.
Fair enough. I mean, there's nothing wrong with talking about us being mad at Jordan Klein. I know he's one of the top 5 or so producers named Jordan Klein at this company, but it's okay to get mad at him on occasion. By the way, also tomorrow, I'm pretty excited for this. We're going to be trying out a new version of the Deep Dive show. It's going to be Lofty and myself. We're going to be doing it with a betting angle. So I just want to let you guys know that's something we're going to be trying out tomorrow. Hope you guys tune in. And also hope you guys give us some feedback on what you liked, what you didn't like, what it is you found valuable. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow. Deep Dive, myself and Lofty. Other injury news that we have to look out for today, Eric, I'll bring this all up. We'll read off the injury reports as they currently stand right now. Most important news, probably the situation on the other side of the Chicago Bulls game, which maybe with the Boston Celtics, perhaps there is a little bit more wiggle room to get to Chicago players if players are going to be ruled out from the Celtics, and then we don't have quite as much blowout risk there. But Jason Tatum's questionable. That's the biggest name who's on the injury report tonight. Josh Hart is questionable. I feel like Josh Hart's been questionable like 6 games in a row or something like that.
Sure has.
Is that true?
Yes. It's been like, so it's been at least 2 that I know of off the top of my head. I think it might be 3, but you'd have to go back through and look specifically. Let's see. There's 1 Q tag that I have in the news queue, 2 Q tags that I have in the news queue, and 3. So the last 3 games he's been questionable entering each, and it went from a neck to a knee somewhere along the line, but he keeps playing through it.
Yeah, that is some far-reaching pain there. But Jason Tatum, he's questionable. We got Najee Marshall questionable. Sam Merrill's questionable. Al Horford is questionable. Sam Hauser also questionable. Now, typically on a slate of this size, I wouldn't bring up that Al Horford and Sam Hauser are questionable, but it matters in the context of Jason Tatum being questionable here, Eric, because in the event that there is no Jason Tatum for the Boston Celtics, well, normally you'd be looking at Sam Hauser to start, or you'd be looking at maybe the Celtics go with the big front court and go with Porzingis and Al Horford. Little difficult to trust the Celtics after what they did the other day. Certainly screwed over a lot of us, but it was a day where we got screwed over by multiple teams. Atlanta Hawks also pulled nonsense by making Bogdanovich healthy scratch. The Celtics had Al Horford as a scratch for that game. But anyway, if Jason Tatum is out and then Sam Hauser and Al Horford are also out, we really have some interesting injury situations that could come about from that spot. So is this anything you're considering as you're building your lineups pre-lock?
Big time. Big time. Purely because we have 3 games, I believe, that lock 7 p.m. Eastern time. Brooklyn, Charlotte, Detroit, Indy, Toronto, Washington. I want to have swapability like I do most nights, but this slate is over, done, kaput, with Dallas, New Orleans, and LAC San Antonio at 8 p.m. Eastern time. It's what I call a sprint slate, where it's 1 hour of swapping, moving things around, making decisions. But for the most part, you're not going to get like 2 hours, 2.5 hours of information to be able to base your lineups off of like we did last night, where I felt like I made some good swaps going on to certain Golden State pieces that were lower owned that I had to account for having that stupid idiot Cam Whitmore who should have just sat yesterday. That would have been a lot better for my life, and I could have just played all the Jayshawn Tate and been happy. But I look at Boston as one of the more intriguing tournament targets if we get that news after lock, because you could get to so much Jaylen Brown. And then I think it opens up even more. I really like the idea of Peyton Pritchard at 5K. If you get Jason Tatum out, whenever we've seen Brown or Tatum out, and then Sam Hauser would be a really, really helpful second to come along with him there and sit, just because we know that's the shooting off the bench at times at a wing position that you can't necessarily replace Tatum with. But there's lots of ways that they can go small, especially look at what you've had from Chicago rolling out on a day in, day out basis. They've been playing Io basically at the glorified 4. And so if it's going to be Giddey, White, Ball, Dosunmu, Vooch, which I think is what we expect, there's a lot of ways where Peyton Pritchard plays a lot more than probably, like, I think the ceiling on his minutes could be outrageous. And we've seen how many times he can come in and do inferno things. He's somebody from a betting angle and from a DFS angle I've got my eye on.
Want to talk about the chalk? Because news, it's going to happen at some point. The Celtics are the big spot, but I don't think, Eric, this is going to be one of these shows where we're just bombarded with news from start to finish the way a lot of these other bigger slates are. So let's just kind of look at the chalk. Let's talk about it, figure out what we like at chalk, what we don't potentially like at chalk. You did mention that there's some interesting chalk plays on the slate. And we'll start by looking at the DraftKings ownership, where there's one mega piece of chalk. Ty Jerome, nearly 60% owned. You got Jonas Valanciunas, no Alex Sarr tonight. He's 40% owned. Diabate, he's 35% owned. Then you got McConnell at 33%. You got Pascal Siakam at 31%. Kelly Oubre at 30%. I'm most interested to ask you, what were you referring to when you said interesting chalk?
Okay. Interesting chalk for me primarily exists around some of the expensive pieces. And I'm a big Scotty Barnes stan. There's not a lot that I'm going to say to negate that one. I think, Tyrese Maxey, he's not really that popular. He's not as popular as what I was expecting him to be, that's for sure. But I think the most interesting piece of chalk to me now is like what we're going to do with the point guard position, because TJ McConnell is pulling a ton of ownership. And I don't know if this changes his role in any kind of like a massive way. Obviously, he'll have a little bit more usage. You have 2 pieces out, Andrew Nembhard, and we'll get to the nuke of the night. I'm so excited about the nuke of the night. I haven't been this confident in a nuke of the night at 5% ownership in a very long time. But
oh my God.
TJ McConnell is currently a guy that I think is a little bit higher owned than he probably should be. And I mean, how many times have I nuked TJ McConnell at 4 or 5% ownership and he's put up a 40 ball for us? A couple of times this season. I generally like to play him, but again, does it change his role that much? Or do we see, again, what can the minutes cap be on a guy like Neesmith? What can it be for a couple of these other pieces on the bench? Obi Toppin probably walks into a little bit more of a primary situation. Jason Tatum available to play, good to know. But I think we see kind of some interesting rotations from the indie side of things. And I'm not super keen on trying to like jam in a guy who's basically still going to play backup point guard to Tyrese Halliburton.
Yeah, let's go back and look at some of the other games where we saw, because Nembhard was out for a little while.
Yeah, so
right
December
before...
27th was his last game. I know that for a fact because I was staring at basketball for like 20 hours last night.
Yeah, earlier in the year, we had, so he was out the 27th, and then Nembhard was also out from the 8th through the 29th of November. So he missed basically all of November. So that's kind of a little bit of an idea for what you might get out of TJ McConnell looking at some of those games. But then also keep in mind there's no Benedict Mathurin tonight. So that's another piece of the equation to consider. That game against the Celtics, I don't really think is going to be a good indication of anything other than the fact that Mathurin was in that game. They also lost by 37. So that's going to be kind of hard to pull any relevant information from. So let's look at some of the other games. Or how about we just look at TJ McConnell's stats from November? Because pretty much all of November, Andrew Nembhard was out. Do you think that's fair to do?
Yes.
All right. So let's look at November. Splits for TJ McConnell by month. And I think this might speak to a little bit of what you're saying. Although keep in mind, we also have Benedict Mathurin out for tonight. But TJ McConnell played 20 minutes per game in November. He played 21 minutes per game in December. He's playing 17 minutes per game so far in January. So if we do look at the numbers in November compared to now, yes, we are certainly looking at increased minutes, but it's not like he was playing 30 minutes per game or anything like that in the absence of Andrew Nembhard. There's minutes to be had here that are going to go to McConnell, but I'm assuming that your skepticism is what the upside is for that playing time.
Correct.
So what do you think is a fair minutes projection for TJ McConnell?
We have him for 22. I put him at 19 right now, and I don't see it changing a ton. 20. I mean, how many minutes do we see him sharing the floor there? He played 16, 16, 16, 14. I know this is all Nembhard back. 23 was like the highest upside for minutes that he had, period, going down towards the end of it. But like middle of December towards end of December with Nembhard out, only one game did he play over 20 minutes.
Keep in mind, though, like I said, we're Mathurin out as well. So that's something else.
Mathurin was out, I believe, for that same span. Mathurin was out. Nope, Mathurin was in. You're correct.
And Quentin Jackson was, because I remember we made the Rampage Jackson jokes back then.
Oh, man.
So
I think we see him tonight for what it's worth. I think we see Quentin Jackson, don't we?
No, he's doubtful.
He's in G League. Oh, yeah, doubtful. Never mind. Two-way G League still. Yeah.
Yeah, so...
I got to change this minutes then, because I have Jarris Walker getting some minutes. I have Obi Toppin getting some minutes. I mean, yeah, they're pretty guard dormant to some extent, but like this could also just be play a ton of Tyrese Halliburton. And again, my thing is how valuable point guard is, especially with my nuke.
So here's why I don't really have an issue with the chalk on TJ McConnell. He's currently showing up a good amount for me in the Sims, and we don't have a crazy minutes projection on you. Like you said, we're projecting him for 22 minutes. And that's enough to make him a pretty strong looking chalk option in the Sims. Could he play a little bit less? Maybe. Like we just looked into November numbers, and when Nembhard was out, McConnell averaged 20 minutes per game. But now there's no Mathurin and there's no Quentin Jackson. I think it's reasonable to think that's 2 extra minutes for TJ McConnell. And there is potential that McConnell plays 25 or 26 minutes. Like we still have a kind of conservative projection on TJ McConnell at 22 minutes. So if he's showing up in lineups in 22 minutes, like what happens if he was to play 25 minutes? He probably is expected to break the slate at that point. So there are pivots that we could get to, but I don't hate that TJ McConnell is chalk, even though it's a big slate and he's not projected for a massive amount of playing time.
I get it. It's just they've shown such like restraint in utilizing him in spots like this still. And I like playing TJ McConnell when he's 5%. I like playing him when he's 10% because he still carries that upside. And, God forbid something happens to my boy Tyrese Halliburton, Iowa State shout out. But I very much question how much we end up seeing him when there's an opportunity for, God, I'm just kind of working through the minutes here. Johnny Furphy, this is a real thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to click on like double-digit minutes for him. I just don't know how much they want to have Halliburton and McConnell on the floor together. And I expect this game to be moving a little bit more than most people do. I ended up backing Detroit here plus 6.5. I can't believe this number hasn't moved. I really can't. It's pretty enjoyable here. Famous last words, but Detroit, I think, has some very intriguing targets on the other side. One we'll get to, but Indy, as I work through it, I get it. I understand, but a third of the lineups here with my boy, it just seems a little bit too rich for my blood. And Ty Jerome, I just can't miss on. Like 4,400 Ty Jerome. If you're playing one or the other, I'm playing Ty Jerome 100 times out of 100, especially if Sam Merrill sits. We're sitting with like a guaranteed minutes allotment for a guy who is playing absolutely out of his mind on the offensive end. And I've been looking for a time to short him. This will not be it. This will definitely not be it.
Yeah, Sam Merrill tonight is questionable to play. And then as far as Ty Jerome, there's no Darius Garland. He's resting today. Karis LeVert, he's out. And that is how we end up with Ty Jerome being projected for just about infinity ownership. So I'll refresh to see if we have an ownership update. Last I looked, Ty Jerome was at, about the same. Yeah, so we got 60% ownership on Ty Jerome over on DraftKings. He's the most rostered player on the entire slate by a ton. And then over on FanDuel, he is 65% owned. So you've made your stance known here, Eric. If you're playing one of the chalk guards, it's going to be Ty Jerome over TJ McConnell. So what does he like about Ty Jerome, despite his ownership? Because he is going to be the most popular play, at least as of now. Who knows what could change on DraftKings and FanDuel. Are you expecting him to start today?
Yes. If he doesn't start, obviously that changes. But we're talking about a 4,400 Ty Jerome. He and TJ McConnell, both good fantasy point per minutes guys. But I legitimately have them like 10 minutes apart right now. 29 I've got for Ty Jerome, 19 brought it up before for TJ McConnell. Yeah, this is just one of those spots where even against Miami, this is not your grandpa's Miami Heat side on the other end of this one. No Jimmy Butler out there for defensive purposes. Yeah, you get another big in Khalil Ware, who's just been awesome and fun to watch for sure. 224.5 total isn't anything crazy, but I look at this as an opportunity where if Ty Jerome starts to just kind of have one guy in my lineup just kind of thrown out there. Of course, this will be the game he finally misses shots, but for the most part, he's gone completely nuts. Yeah, I ripped the usage down a little bit playing alongside Donovan Mitchell, but the minutes more than make up for it. And again, if you get Sam Merrill sitting, there's just nothing that's going to stop him from being on the floor. And that's a really good feeling for a 4,400 Ty Jerome with his fantasy point per minute rate.
Yeah, so Ty Jerome, I personally, Ty Jerome, TJ McConnell, those are the players I have the two most exposure to in my last run of The Sims. We did get that Celtics update. Jason Tatum is going to be in, but then Sam Hauser and Al Horford, they're both out. So we'll talk about if there's anything we could mine out of that from a value standpoint. I do have a pivot off of Ty Jerome I like. I think you could probably guess it pretty easily if you had to pick one guy, if you're going to find a pivot off of Jerome, though.
Yep. I think we can kind of all agree on what that's going to be off of Jerome.
Yeah. So if you do have lineups that are not going to have Ty Jerome in them, Craig Porter Jr., pretty solid fantasy producer. And it's not like you could project. There's a potential for him to start over Ty Jerome. I don't think it's going to happen, but it's within the realm of possibility. They've started Craig Porter Jr. in the past, but he's definitely somebody I want to be getting exposure to today. While he isn't going to be projected for the same amount of playing time or anything like that as Jerome, we've seen an upside in Craig Porter Jr., and he's the flat min at 3K over on DraftKings. So I really like Craig Porter Jr. as a pivot off of Jerome. I just at their price points is not the end of the world if you have lineups with both of them as well. But a 3K Craig Porter Jr., are you on the same page as me with him being somebody you want to be getting to?
Yeah, I think if Miami doesn't, or sorry, not if Miami, if Cleveland doesn't start Ty Jerome, I'm pretty confident it'll be Mitchell, Strus, Niang, Evan Mobley, Jared Allen. Like, I'm pretty confident that that's going to be the case. I doubt we get Craig Porter Jr. in any kind of a reserve there. The reason I think Ty Jerome is because it's just kind of like industry consensus and the way the rotations have worked. He's closed some games recently as well. Played fantastically well all season long. Kenny Atkinson raves about him, and obviously there's something to be said about being able to see how hard somebody works in the shadows on things and then comes out, just hit the ground running, and he's a completely different dude at 27 years old this season. But I think when you look at Duncan Robinson, Haywood Highsmith as kind of the 2-3 on the other side, I could see a world where they bring Niang out there. And then I think that would be really difficult for Craig Porter Jr. because then he'd have to find minutes alongside of Ty Jerome. But I think Ty Jerome can serve. He's 6'5", should be decent enough there at the 2, going up against Duncan Robinson. They're both out there to do the same kind of thing. They do it very, very differently, that's for sure. But overall, I think Craig Porter Jr., in the event that Ty Jerome starts, is very, very intriguing as an option off the bench.
And let's see, yes, they are. Jordan, could you pull up the projections for the Boston Celtics? Because that's just been updated for the injury news that we had there. So I want to look at the Boston Celtics, and it's a big slate, but considering the amount of players that are on the injury report at this point, Eric, like I don't think that this might be the least amount of value we've had on a slate of this size the entire season. Is that fair to say? Or I should say this, I'll word it this way: pending value.
Pending value. I mean, I will say it's not like McConnell sucks as a play. It's not like I have 0% of him. I just think he's overowned relative to other options. And then the position, which is very, very valuable today, especially clicking Ty Jerome and then having, point guard, shooting guard open up at the next guard spot, and then having the utility where you can play anybody. Like, it's a valuable position. And Ty Jerome for 300 more with 10-minute difference that I've got, 7-minute difference we have at the site. Yeah, TJ McConnell's overall the better fantasy producer when you take into account that Ty Jerome's going to have to share the floor with the one, the only Donovan Mitchell out there doing everything. But I think that there's still a world where I think I'd still say we have decent enough value. There's been some slates, I think earlier in the season when everybody's healthy, just getting the season started, where I was just like, I have no idea where I'm going to do. Like, think about how many Jalen Smith slates we had to start off for the first month of the year. Those were dark times.
Yeah, and that's also why I kind of clarified to change my question a little bit. Pending value in terms of like what we might want to be swapping to after lock.
Yep.
Like, I'm not, at least as of now, there's nothing I'm going to be changing in the Sims with boosts or anything like that to try to backload my lineups. As things are standing right now, I'm just going to be playing whatever it is that shows up for me, and I'm not going to be too worried about when start times are.
Yeah, it's going to be really dependent on starting lineups more than it is injury information. I think that that's probably the right way of phrasing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's also, it makes sense. We don't have a 10 p.m. Eastern time game on the main slate on DraftKings. So it's definitely, I think you're probably correct in your analysis there. Again, if Cleveland, if Sam Merrill's in for this game, there's a world where he starts over Ty Jerome. I think that's, now that I'm thinking through it, probably your most likely scenario if Sam Merrill is in. Otherwise, I'd say George Niang, the guy who could surprise over Ty Jerome. But we'll obviously have that news. You're just going to have 3 games that lock ahead of it.
All right. I'm very excited for this because we got just an excellent super chat. When people force us to do the things, Dustin Stringer says, exotic play with the animation, please. Jordan, play it.
Gonna financially
that. And you know what was great? A couple of things. First off, there's never been a slate where I think the exotic play has been more important, particularly if you look at our ownership and the guys at the top of it right now. I mean, we've already discussed some of these guys. And then in the actual animation itself, we got TJ McConnell mean mugging right there. You got Peyton Pritchard. Is he somebody who could end up mattering with the Celtics being a little bit more shorthanded? There's so many directions to go here, Eric. There are just so many fantastic exotic options. But of all the exotic options, who's the most exotic one that's going to land in your lineups most frequently?
Jonas Valanciunas.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Like, I mean, I look at my exposures here, and there's a lot of them that show up. But I'll tell you what, there's one that I think is underowned, and he's a fairly obvious one. Want to give it a guess?
Nikola Jokic.
Yeah. We've got some, so the value we have is in the backcourt, right? We got TJ McConnell, we've got Ty Jerome, we've already got another exotic and Jonas Valanciunas, who's pulling a bunch of center ownership. As a result of all this, Nikola Jokic kind of falls through the cracks a little bit. We've got Nikola Jokic projected for, I'll pull up his ownership now on DraftKings as well as FanDuel. He's projected to be somewhat low owned. And if we do have a lot of backcourt value, or at least that's where the value is, then we probably want to be paying up for guys in the front court. That usually means Nikola Jokic is somebody we're going to be interested in. He's 11% owned on DraftKings. He's 2% owned on FanDuel. I don't know. It seems like a good exotic to me, Eric.
Yeah, really, really good exotic. Great bit. Always fun to do on this show. Thank you for the super chat. We really appreciate you.
Shout out Dustin. One of the good ones. SC gifted us 5 YouTube memberships. SC, thank you very much. We appreciate you. Chris Williams also gifted out 5 YouTube memberships. Guys, thank you very much for supporting the channel. If anybody else wants to know the easiest ways to support the channel, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's just the quickest way. It's going to cost you guys absolutely nothing other than like a second and a half of your time. Or consider signing up for any of the subscriptions that we have here. Link down below in the YouTube description box. If you guys do want to sign up for a Stokastic sub, which comes with access to our Discord channel, I'm about to be checking for questions in there. Sign up for any of those down below, or sponsored here by OddsShopper Portfolio EV, which we also have a 7-day free trial for. So if you guys have been on the fence about trying our betting tools, why not try it for free? It's something that I use for my own bets. A lot of the guys here are using, Lofty, he's starting a new piece of content where he's going to be doing some bets on screen on Twitter with everybody this week. And then tomorrow, Lofty and I, we're going to be doing our new version of the deep dive we're trying out. We're going to be looking at Portfolio EV. And if you guys want access, what's a better way than for free? 7-day free trial. We also have our link join. So for each book you guys sign up for, not only could that apply to get a free month of a core DFS subscription, but you could also use that, and you could also get a free month of OddsShopper Portfolio EV. So if you guys are looking to try out our betting tools, link down below in the YouTube description box. 7 days, totally free. All right, another super chat here, Eric. Another super chat. By the way, Najee Marshall, he is going to be in today. He's
that sucks. I don't want that.
Najee Marshall is in.
Don't want that.
Super chat here from Josh Chapman. Josh wants to know, Strus Brown or Duncan Robinson? By Brown, I'm going to assume, just based on pricing, he means Bruce Brown.
I would assume so.
Do you have a preference between those three?
What was the third one? I heard the first two.
Yeah. Also, we got some exotics in here. Max Strus, Duncan Robinson.
Oh my
a couple
God.
more exotics, and then Bruce Brown, who, as his name would indicate, less exotic than the other two. But Strus, Duncan Robinson, Brown, which direction are you going?
Bruce Brown.
Let's see. Also, are any of those guys priorities for you today?
No. I have 10% or less of each one.
Same. I'm going to answer Max Strus, though. I just, with Garland being out, there's extra opportunity there for him. We haven't seen Strus play extended minutes really at all. I don't know. Could this be the time? Do you think there's a minute ceiling for Max Strus potentially tonight?
Yeah, he played 35 on the 25th. Went through that one a little bit yesterday as well. Sam Merrill out. So yeah, that is going to solidify Ty Jerome chalk for me. Craig Porter Jr. now, by default, there's like nobody else for ball handling coming off the bench so long as he's starting. Again, you want to have Ty Jerome starting to play more Craig Porter Jr., I think. But Max Strus, he got up to 35 minutes against Houston. That is a nice ceiling that you can get to. I think he's in play. I have him in 8% of lineup. So relative to the ownership, he's the guy that I think that I like the best, quote unquote, but I have right around the exact same amount of Bruce Brown. He's just far more popular.
I mean, they just kind of funny how the universe works sometimes, because my answer was already Max Strus, but now that Sam Merrill's been ruled out, that just kind of confirms Max Strus as being my answer amongst those three guys that Josh asked us about. And then also, while we're talking about Max Strus, Sam Merrill being out certainly bolsters Ty Jerome, who you and I already thought was a good piece of chalk. We're not breaking any ground here. More than half the field is playing Ty Jerome, but I also think this benefits Max Strus. I'm really curious to see what Strus's ownership is, because at least on last run, he was only projected for 7% ownership. In addition to that, if you go and look at Craig Porter Jr., who I brought up before, he was only projected for 0.5% ownership over on FanDuel. And then on DraftKings, we had Craig Porter Jr. for the same number, 0.5% projected ownership at 3K. I don't know that he's going to become popular or anything like that, but Craig Porter Jr., I hope he remains crazy low owned, because I already thought he was a reasonable pivot. And now that we're taking another guard out of the mix for the Cavs, I mean, Craig Porter Jr. at 0.5% ownership, I think that's an upside play on a slate where we are going to have to beat out, especially on DraftKings, like you mentioned before, what is it, 79,000 entries who are in the field? There's a clear upside in Craig Porter Jr., 0.5% owned at 3K. I think each piece of news that we have that comes out makes me feel better about him as a mega contrarian option.
Yeah, I like it. But again, point guard for me,
Yeah.
I am just jamming a guy who is the nuke of the night. I think this is a perfect time to get over there to that.
Let's see what else we have as far
Or
as
don't.
super chats go. A handful more came in. Chris Albers is asked us, Pirtle, Boucher, or Robinson. And he said Robinson on Toronto. So Orlando Robinson. All right. Boy, you just need a roster of big men from the Toronto Raptors tonight, don't you, Chris? All right. So he is convinced he needs a big man from the Toronto Raptors. Preference, Pirtle, Boucher, Orlando Robinson. Any of those guys, players you think are going to be important to you?
No.
Let's see. I have 11% of Orlando Robinson is certainly not going to be in lineups for me. Boucher is actually pulling 10% ownership, but he's not showing up for me. Yeah, I don't really like any of them either. By default, my answer is going to be Pirtle, just because he's actually in lineups for me where the other two aren't, but I don't have a real strong take on the Raptors big man situation there. So Chris, but yeah, if you want to play one of them, I'll tell you Jakob Pirtle, but not something that's important to me. Not something that's important to me. Sean Jeezy says, hello, friends. If you're playing 150 lineups, then you had to have 0% of somebody projected for over 20% ownership. Who would it be? Okay. There aren't that many, if I'm not mistaken. Let's refresh this. All right. So our mission here, Eric, to find one player's projected for north of 20% ownership that you and I would not want to play at all. This is not saying that we're actually playing 0% of them, but if we had to pick one of these guys to fade, which guy are you picking?
Kelly Oubre.
Let's see. Who am I? It's Bruce Brown for me. If I have to pick one, just because I only have a couple of lineups with him. It's a good matchup. It's a good price point. But if I have to pick one of these guys, he's going to be the one, at least how ownership currently stands, that I wouldn't want to have. Once again, not actually outright fading him, but just answering Sean's question as he set it up for us. Freudian Slip wants to know, do we like Ty Jerome if he's coming off the bench? And
Yes.
he has proposed to us a starting lineup as well of Mitchell, Strus, Jalen Tyson. I forgot. Remember the Jalen Tyson slate from months ago?
Sure do.
We have seen him start once. So anyway, he wants to know if the starting lineup is Mitchell, Strus, Jalen Tyson, Mobley, Allen, who we still like. This is a very specific scenario. The answer is yes, I would still like him. I'd like him less. If he doesn't start just by default, I'm going to like him less than we already do. I'm pretty skeptical that Jalen Tyson ends up starting, though.
I'm pretty skeptical of it too. I think no matter what, I'm going to have a lot of Ty Jerome, because the world where he closes over Tyson is like almost automatic. It's just impossible for me to look at any scenario and not play Ty Jerome at 4,400 with all of the pieces Cleveland have out.
If I'm not mistaken, the game that Jalen Tyson started, wasn't there like an absurd amount of players out?
Yes.
Where it was, I think like Garland, Mobley, and Allen may have all been out that game. I'll pull it up.
Of course, they're having Taj Gibson do this garbage start crap again. Awesome job, Charlotte. Way to go. Way to be a just poverty franchise.
That team is terrible.
They're so tilting. Yeah, Tyson had 23 points, 34 minutes. It was on the 12th, I believe, was the day that everybody was out. Oh, no, it was G League. We're looking, I'm going through his box scores on NBA.com.
November 20th, they played against
November
the Pelicans.
20th.
Also, the Cavs won that game by 28 points.
He played 37 minutes.
Garland was out, Strus was out, LeVert was out, Okoro was out, Wade was out, Merrill was out. So their starting lineup that day was Don Mitchell only played 19 minutes. So even though he started, they limited him. Same with Evan Mobley, started, played 17 minutes. Then he got Ty Jerome, started, only played 23 minutes. Tyson played 37 minutes that game. Jared Allen played 21. So they ran a very odd rotation. They gave 30 minutes to Luke Travers. They gave 35 minutes to Craig Porter Jr. They gave 37 minutes to Jalen Tyson. That's such a weird scenario. Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen all playing sub 20 minutes. I don't really want to pull anything from that.
Me either.
You seem very dejected right now. What's the matter, Eric?
You don't listen to me. Ever.
Uh-oh.
I've asked to do the nuke of the night multiple times, and then I just stopped.
Well, I have to answer the super
Look at the
chats
chat. Look at the chat. The chat is telling you everything you need to know about how much you don't love me. And I'm disappointed. I'm not even mad. I'm just disappointed.
All right, I have to be. I thought that you were so thrilled that we already did the exotic play of the
No.
night. I thought maybe you weren't interested.
Literally, I asked you 3 times. I asked for salmon 3 times. Fuck.
But we did I just thought you were so content with the exotic play, and you're so thrilled by that you didn't even want to do it. I thought you weren't interested anymore.
No, I asked. I said I gave you like an automatic segue, and Jordan Klein started it up like twice or 3 times, and you didn't even notice one time because everything I say just goes whoop. Because you're like, I don't respect Eric as a DFS player. I don't respect him as a friend. I just make love to him occasionally, but that's about it.
All right. So all of those things are true. I don't have anything else to add. Eric, who's your nuke of the night?
All right, this is the best play of the day, and I don't think it's remotely close. Greg, I have a couple of things that I want to ask you. First off, so can you hear me?
Yes, I could hear you.
Okay, that's good. Who leads the Indiana Pacers in net rating this season?
Who leads the Indiana Pacers? I know their starting lineup has an absurd net rating together. Like, absolutely ridiculous.
Yep.
The starting lineups net rating.
Because of one guy.
Siakam?
Andrew Nembhard, 8.7 net rating, 114.6 of offensive rating, which, again, really decent stuff. I mean, a nice number there. 105.9 defensive rating. He is by far the best defender on this basketball team, and I don't think it's remotely close. And there are only a couple of like individual defenders that I'll give the credence to. But if you watched a couple of those games over in France, and if you watched the Olympics over in France, you saw that Andrew Nembhard played massive minutes for Canada over one Jamal Murray. That's how good Andrew Nembhard is on the defensive side of the ball. Well, he's not playing basketball today. And Cade Cunningham is going to go absolutely batshit fucking insane. And he is 10-2, 5% owned. His projection didn't change anywhere. And I feel like I'm taking crazy pills because we're talking about one of the better defenses as a starting 5 with Andrew Nembhard in the lineup. And then one of the worst defenses. And we keep talking about Tyrese Halliburton and we keep talking about TJ McConnell. These are not defenders capable of handling the glory that is one Cade Cunningham. I am sending him to the moon. I have not been this positive that one, a line was incorrect at +6.5, and 2, that a guy was going to go completely insane the way that Cade Cunningham is on this Indiana Pacers team, because you can go back to the box scores a couple of times here and look. First game of the season, he puts up 48, respectable first time out. No Andrew Nembhard on the floor. They face Indy again. He goes out, puts up 52 and change in just 33 minutes. They win by 24. He completely eviscerates them. No Andrew Nembhard on the floor. He then has to face Andrew Nembhard. He goes up in that third matchup and he gets shut down by Andrew Nembhard. Just 37.5 fantasy points in 39 minutes. His worst per minute fantasy point game almost of the entire season. Cade Cunningham is going to go completely berserk. I'm using up half of my lineups to utilize Cade Cunningham. This is a massive stand at the point guard position on a spend up that nobody wants to get to. Cade Cunningham, your nuke of the night.
I'm going to go with two different guys here. Two different ones. And it's both guys I've already brought up over the course of the show.
Somebody said you can't bring up multiple nukes based on yesterday where I said Ayton/Klingon. People are awful. Continue.
Yeah. Maybe you can't, but I think I'm allowed to. So at point guard for me, and also, once again, these are two guys I've already brought up over the course of the show. Craig Porter Jr., we just got a projections update, Eric. He's 0.8% owned.
Let's go. That's the lowest own I can remember you pulling out of your pocket. So that makes me happy. Daddy like you. Daddy like you a lot.
It's about as low owned as somebody could be projected to be on an individual slate. So
correct.
Craig Porter Jr., just so I could get some exposure to him, I'm going to take a couple of minutes away from Ty Jerome, give it to Craig Porter Jr. It's still going to get me to a shit ton of Ty Jerome, but I kind of like that as a pivot option, a little bit of leverage, get myself some Craig Porter Jr. as a contrarian play. And then on the high end, another guy who I brought up before as well, Jokic is 10% owned. We've got backcourt value, and I'm just repeating what I said before. We've got backcourt value. We don't have any obvious spend-up options. There's no one expensive option that's pulling a ton of ownership. The most popular guy who's priced at a pretty high price tag, it's an 18% owned Karl Anthony Towns. You get Nikola Jokic at 10% owned on a slate with backcourt value. So there you go. We got a low owned Nikola Jokic, which almost never happens, and then a value option who's 0.8% owned. Those are the directions I'm going in. Nobody's going to have an issue with it.
No, I love absolutely both of those. Again, I love the Cade. I love the Jokic. I mean, both of them, to be able to get them at their current ownership, it feels like a dream come true. I'm happy to rotate around some sketchy value pieces around them and make it work.
Let's see what else we have as far as questions. If anything came in, we do have Connor wants to know who are the DK cash game locks. So, all right, things are pretty set in terms of what we're going to be looking at for the slate heading into lock. We don't know what the starting lineups are going to be. One of the reasons to tune into the playback show that Josh and I are going to be doing starting in 16 minutes to see what is the Cleveland Cavaliers starting lineup going to be. That's going to be massive for today. We did get the Pacers starting lineup. It's Shepherd starting, which we've seen a handful of times this year. No real surprise there. Cash game locks, Ty Jerome, Valanciunas. I'm still going to put McConnell in there, Pascal Siakam. Even though he's coming off the bench, Diabate probably should still be in your cash games. He's going to be super popular. And then also, he came off the bench last game. And what did he do? He played a lot more minutes than Taj Gibson. He scored a ton of fantasy points. His price point hasn't gone up all that much. Anything you disagree with there, Eric, or anybody you would add to the mix?
Nope. Everything sounded pretty darn good to me. Obviously, I'm making a strong tournament stand. I don't think Cade Cunningham is somebody that you need to be rolling out in cash or anything of that nature. So there is that.
All right, let's go in and see what we have in Discord. Have not answered the questions from in here yet. And let's see what we have. Oh boy, a bunch of them piling up. Mike1377 wants to know who is our favorite value and our favorite pay up for FanDuel, Eric? Top FanDuel value. That's still Ty Jerome to me. Once again, we're assuming he starts. He still looks great even if he comes off the bench. Favorite pay up for the slate. I'm kind of interested in your... I assume your answer is going to be Cade Cunningham, but DraftKings and FanDuel.
Yep.
Do you have anybody maybe FanDuel specific or still going to go with Cade here?
FanDuel 10K, full send Cade Cunningham, full send. And somebody brought up Aaron Nesmith. Don't bring Aaron Nesmith up to me. He's a negative on the floor, negative 1.1, not estimated plus minus, actual plus minus on the defensive side. 74th percentile last season. He has disintegrated into thin air. He was a terrible defender joining Indy, coming off of Boston. He is a terrible defender now for Indy. I know he's out there for certain purposes. One of them will not be to guard Cade Cunningham. He's going to be able to do whatever he wants against that fool.
Next question here, by the way, my favorite pay up on FanDuel, it's 2% on Nikola Jokic. I understand that there's some really strong value at the center position, but if you get one of these ceiling games from Nikola Jokic, it's going to seem silly that he was only 2% owned on FanDuel. Mike, whoa, that was the one we just read. Sniffs 1234. He's asking me what we think about Craig Porter Jr. We've hit on that.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, though, Sniffs.
Fun.
Mr. Cool Cam wants to know favorite contrarian players at each position for FanDuel. Eric, do you have FanDuel and DraftKings lineups built out or just DraftKings?
I had FanDuel coming into this show, but if you reran something, you're going to be ahead of me and it's going to be more applicable. So just go.
Okay. Yeah. So I will give my answers here. At point guard, favorite, I'll go with Craig Porter Jr. And yeah, what is his ownership at on FanDuel? Craig Porter Jr. 0.5% on for Craig Porter Jr. on FanDuel. So that's going to be my favorite contrarian option there. Shooting guard, my favorite contrarian option. Jordan Poole, 15% owned. I think that's fair. Anything like sub 20%, we'll consider that contrarian for this.
That's perfect.
All right. Small forward, that is going to be... Boy, there's a handful of guys I could answer here.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Kawhi Leonard at 6,400 on FanDuel with his minutes restriction starting to come up. It would be one thing if he was expensive, but we've kind of got this crossover where his price, I just can't imagine Kawhi is going to be too much cheaper than $6,400 and his minutes restriction starting to go up and he's not getting any run on FanDuel. So I'm going to go with Kawhi at $6,400. At power forward, I'll go with Aaron Nesmith, even though we just had him shit all over by Eric, but I mean, there's opportunity there for him, and he's contrarian.
Yeah, he's fine. He's
and then
fine.
At center on FanDuel, I'm going to go with Nikola Jokic.
Yep, perfect.
Cream wants to know, are we getting to Miles Bridges on DraftKings, Eric?
Am I getting to Miles Bridges? A little bit, yeah. I've got him in 22% of lineups. I think he's a little bit underowned.
It's also a shorthanded team. You know, there's no LaMelo
Miles Bridges.
Ball.
Wait, Miles Bridges on, because I had FanDuel up. Holy crap. I just saw the refresh and I was like, holy mother of God, he's popular. He's super popular on FanDuel. 20% on DK. Yeah, I'm a tiny bit over.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at the state of that Hornets team. Who else is shooting the basketball?
Micic in his first percentile true shooting.
He might be. He's not chalk. He might be better today.
Honestly, this is probably Micic day, and we're all going to just collectively throw our arms up and just lament DFS in 2025 right now because like stuff like that just keeps happening on the daily, and it needs to stop. He can't keep getting away with it.
Just Micic.
Just Micic, yeah. This dumb. But like Horford and Bogdanovic, I mean, it's been we're all in this together, fam. We're all in this together now, birds of a feather now. It will get better. I want to get better, said the bleachers.
I mean, the thing I find really funny about Micic, and it's different because his price point has gone up now. We've also just brought this up on other shows. He's only had a few bad starts, at least from a fantasy outcome relative to his price. And almost all of them have been the games he's been chalk. And then he's been like fine the other games. But anyway, Micic.
He's been like good the other games, which is annoying. But then his price goes up a little bit and you just can't do it.
Einsteinium wants to know thoughts on paying a little more for Pritchard as a pivot off of TJ McConnell or Ty Jerome. So Peyton Pritchard for today, I can't prioritize him over McConnell or Ty Jerome, but an individual lineup, if you're looking to get a little bit different, you know, there's no Sam Hauser for the Celtics. There's no Al Horford. Could that mean a couple of extra minutes go to Peyton Pritchard? Sure. Certainly within the realm of outcomes. I don't dislike Peyton Pritchard for this slate at all, Eric.
I don't dislike him at all either. I'm playing some.
Yeah, he looks solid. We got him projected for 26.5 fantasy points. He will absolutely be somebody I'm getting exposure to. Another thing, too, great matchup from against the Bulls. It's an up-pace spot. For whatever reason, the Celtics like to play Peyton Pritchard occasionally in garbage time, and he crushes some of those slates. We've seen slates where Pritchard's been chalk. He's been terrible for a lot of the game, and the Celtics are up at like 30 in the fourth quarter. He plays with all the backups and just scores a ton of fantasy points. He's not chalk today, but I think that's one of the possible outcomes for him on this slate.
Yeah, the big one for me, Sam Hauser out. I mean, he gets to do the Sam Hauser thing because now we've started to see Jaden Springer. I go back to that Clippers game. It made me want to stab everything. They were playing the second unit Clippers, and I needed like one more point out of Peyton Pritchard to win a lot of money, and that did not happen. But yeah, we've seen Jaden Springer get rolled out in some of these spots. Now, if you just need to stay ahead and you want to go ahead further, you just keep Peyton Pritchard out on the floor. So a lot of game scripts where he's going to work out really, really nicely today.
Next question here. This one is from our own news god. He wants to know who the lotion play is. Eric, who's going to put the ball in the bucket tonight?
The lotion goes on the skin. Cade Cunningham is going to put up 35 plus and just take us to the promised land. Lotion goes on the skin.
Where there really aren't that many, pay up options. That I feel like Jokic is kind of a cop out of an answer to give. I'll go with Cat.
Not really.
I'll go with Cat. I mean, I know people
Okay.
aren't playing, but I've already brought him up multiple times over the course of the show.
Also, did you see Sabonis's rebound prop too? Sabonis
Yes.
could do the lotion play of the basket by rebounding and points. He could put up more rebounds than he puts up points today, which I expect him to score 20. So, I mean, this is just silliness, potential silliness we're looking at here on the Sacramento side with Sabonis.
I like how you accidentally call it the lotion play of the basket. Nothing wrong with a rebrand.
Yeah,
Nothing
Freud is cooler than all of us. So there you go.
Jake wants to know any love for Neesmith tonight.
No, not a ton. My main issue is like, how many minutes do we still expect him to play? He's 3,300. If he plays a lot of minutes, he's going to look really, really good. I mean, he's up to like 23% right now. I've got him in 18% of lineups. Maybe I give him a little bit of a boost here in the next 8 minutes because that game's locking, but I think he got up to 21 minutes in that last game. It was a blowout. It looked kind of weird, that second game of the French series, the Paris games, they called it. But I think he's interesting if you can give him like a 23, 24 minute allotment. And I think that's what we did give him. So yeah, maybe I get to a little bit when it's all said and done.
Yeah, I think he's a good option, especially he asked for FanDuel where he's not all that popular. Yeah, I like him as a lesser owned play on FanDuel. Kareem wants to know, do we prefer Davion Mitchell to Ty Jerome? No, Ty Jerome over Davion Mitchell.
Ty Jerome over Davion Mitchell for sure.
M. Grizzly, thoughts on Jalen Tyson? He's been getting more minutes than Craig Porter Jr. Boy, this is the second question we've gotten about Jalen Tyson. I want to see the starting lineup. As of right now, though, because consider who's out for the Cleveland Cavaliers, the big player. It's Darius Garland. Darius Garland being out should benefit Craig Porter Jr. more than Jalen Tyson.
Correct. Jalen Tyson, we have projected pretty well for what it's worth. We gave him 21 and a half minutes. I think he's like a 0.85 DraftKings points per minute guy, 1.84. Like, I'm going to get to him in some lineups. So I don't like that call and that shout out, especially because he's got the shooting guard small forward. There's some utility in firing up more than you think of him.
Next question. It is from Krebsy. Krebsy wants to know. Oh, by the way, we just
Jalen Tyson starting. Holy shit. Go get them all. Get them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Pokemon.
I mean, the game doesn't lock for 30 minutes.
I know, but it's going to affect my TJ McConnell ownership.
That's fair. All right. Well, screw everything we've said so far. Jalen Tyson looks really good. We were wrong.
Also, I'm not going to go out of my way. Again, I still think Ty Jerome lots of ways where he ends up getting the closing minutes over Jalen Tyson. Just saying.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, this has to be something, though, where we allocate some of our Ty Jerome minutes to Jalen Tyson. Like, Ty Jerome, once he still looks good, but he doesn't look as good as he did a few minutes ago.
No, he does not. And now with this, again, this is the push and pull effect. I might get to more TJ McConnell now at the point guard position at 4,100 after talking mad shit about him being in a third of lineups, purely because we're going to get Ty Jerome still, I think, more popular because this happened like 5 minutes before lock. So I'm heading to the Sims right now. This is where that entry manager comes in so much handy. If you guys aren't utilizing that with the Sims, please be, because I'm able to just go back, tweak in the pre-contest simulator, jump in, get everything done in one swoop, and then upload it immediately to DraftKings. That is such a plus, and it saves you maybe like 45 seconds from having to copy paste, but that's a valuable 45 seconds right now.
All right. I just made a couple of manual tweaks here, took some minutes away. Also, unfortunately, I can't like Craig Porter Jr. quite as much now. I'm still going to get exposure to him as a contrarian option, but I'm not going to play quite as much as I was going to before because now we just kind of have to expect slightly bigger lineups for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Rebuilding stuff right now, but initial thoughts on Jalen Tyson starting, Ty Jerome. How much do you like? We're still going to like Ty Jerome, but how much less do we like Ty Jerome now? And how much do we like Jalen Tyson as a value option?
Yeah, my thing is now I think him and TJ McConnell get much, much closer together than what I had before. And kind of changed the entire push-pull dynamic. I'm not going to do anything to like really overhaul my lineups. I will say this also makes Donovan Mitchell look a lot better. That's going to be the one thing that doesn't change, I think, as much as it probably should. He's right now around 13, 14%. I'm going to give Donovan Mitchell a boost because him not having to share the floor with a guy like Ty Jerome, who's had usage and kind of eaten up opportunity of his teammates, I think this is a really nice boost for him as well.
Boy, let's see.
This is going to be stressful.
So I've got a sim run here. What did this end up doing to my lineups?
Also, this makes me want to jam Jokic too, getting 3,100 at shooting guard, small forward. That has to get me onto more Jokic. If it doesn't, I'm going to break everything.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just gonna have to rerun everything in late swap because one of the issues is Ty Jerome is still projected for so much ownership that lowering his projection, it ended up making it so that I like hardly got to Ty Jerome. So
yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, but it's fine. I'll just rerun everything post lock here. TJ McConnell did end up coming up in lineups as a result of me lowering my exposure to Ty Jerome. So I've got McConnell about half my lineups now. I'm fine with that though. I don't have an issue with that being the case.
My God, this is going to be insane to finish up.
So I know that you before, Eric, were not that you hated TJ McConnell, but you had said coming into the show that you thought you were going to be underweight to him. Is that still going to be the case for you?
No, I'm overweight to TJ McConnell now. It just changes the entire thing for me. Like I can't emphasize that enough. I'm going to get to a lot more. I want to make sure that I don't have my Cade Cunningham go anywhere. That's the other thing I really, really, really want to do. Entry manager. All right, let's do that. Got my 150 uploaded and then top 20 there. Download entry file. I'm just going to update this and just uploads it. So I got a placeholder in, and then I'm going to tweak my stuff the way that I want to for these last couple minutes.
Yeah,
all right, so I'm happy to have that.
Like I said, I made some quick manual tweaks just because I feel like this gives me a good idea of what I want heading into the slate. So like I've got McConnell in about half my lineups here. Now I've got Nesmith in 30%. I've got 35% of Pascal Siakam. I'm most concerned that I have the amount of exposure to the Pacers guys I want. And then Cavs stuff and all of that, I'll just have to do it in the late swaps when we get projection updates and ownership updates, which Josh and I will handle in a second here in the post-lock show. We'll pull up the updated projections for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Let me just really quickly check to make sure there weren't any. All right. Last second super chats. We got Sunflower wants to know minutes projection for D'Angelo Russell and then wants to know why he isn't more owned. The reason he isn't more owned is because of how much other value there is at the point guard position. We got 28 minutes in for D'Angelo Russell. And then Coley Poston, I'm late to the party. Who are the best Pacers? Pascal Siakam, TJ McConnell, and Aaron Nesmith for me. Eric, any final thoughts before we head on over to playback?
That was fun. That was a fun crunch there at the end to make sure that I ended up getting back onto some McConnell there. But yeah, Mitchell, Strus, Tyson, Mobley, Allen, that changes the dynamic a little bit. I was against the McConnell. I was just jamming Jerome, assuming he would start in some capacity. But hey, they did it back in November. We talked about it. It was definitely a possibility. Very happy we got that news ahead of time because now I'm cheering for TJ McConnell. Didn't see that one coming, but go Cade Cunningham more than anything.
All right, guys, do us a favor, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and join Josh and I over in playback because I'm about to start late swapping my lineups. We're going to talk about the implications of what's going on with the Cavs. We'll look at some projection updates, ownership updates, and that'll be covered for you guys over on playback. So Jordan, drop the link in there and you guys could click on that link and join Josh and I over on the other side. We're also going to have the games on TV.
Post it more, Jordan. Jesus. My God.
I agree. That's good advice, Eric. Who's the real producer. Have a good night, guys. See you in playback.